Hi everyone. For this particular video, I wanted to talk about Karl Jobst. And specifically, I wanted to talk about him again now that he released his defense video after losing his defamation lawsuit versus Billy Mitchell. And I haven't seen the entire video myself, but I have seen a lot of people respond to it and talk about it. So I wanted to basically talk less about Karl Jobst and more about what's been said about him and what people are starting to say about him now that it's kind of become common knowledge that he's a fairly disingenuous person beyond his past, but into the present space and time. So before we get into that, I just want to say that, Karl is someone that I've written about in the past. So if we go back to like my YouTube videos here on my channel, I talk about why I left speedrunning and continue to focus on Metroidvania. And I talk about Karl Jobst, but also just my research more broadly. So back in January, specifically January 13th, 2025, those who walk away from speedrunning, a trans woman's experiences researching and abuse suffered from the speedrunning community. I've already read this post before, but I did want to talk about it very quickly. Just Karl Jobst was someone that I wrote about in this particular piece, or that comes up in this specific piece, because there's just a whole bunch of stuff that I talk about. But in the footnotes, I actually quote some different pieces that I've written in the past. One of those was from an old Doom Eternal review from 2020, a review of Iron Fury from 2021. But then we get to Caleb Hart and his abusive behaviors back in 2019. And if we go even further, we get to Karl Jobst. And Karl Jobst is someone I cite from another piece that I wrote. I'm talking about it here in Those Who Walk Away from Speedrunning, but it's actually from a book series that I wrote. And that book series is on my website, but I published that April 27th, 2024. So, Modularity in Class, this was a part of my poetry module. And at this point, I was finishing up that particular book, and while I was finishing it, I talk about a lot of different things. It's a very broad book in a larger book series that talks about video games and sex work and communism and the Gothic and various other things. But Karl came up in that particular book volume in a longer book series. But Karl was someone that, I was familiar with before that. And in regards to Karl's video series and just his YouTube channel, but even before that, if we look at this video from 3 months ago, as I'm reading this blogger piece out, which is an excerpt from, a larger book and an even larger book series that, I've been writing since 2022, but is actually based on research that goes back to at least 2014. So, the book series actually started with my PhD, which I wrote in 2023. That was based basically on 7 years, going on 8 years worth of research at that point, from university in 2014 into grad school 2017 into my post-grad, which was basically 2018, late 2018 onwards. And I spent basically all of 2019 trying to get into, just applying for positions, trying to get accepted into a program to have someone oversee my work. But then COVID happened and that threw a wrench in the works. But I just continued my research. That became my PhD. My PhD I wrote about a year and a half into writing my book series. I released it first, then my manifesto, and then the book where I cite Karl Jobst. But needless to say, I was well versed in Karl at that point, though I didn't necessarily learn about his shitty behaviors until after writing my poetry module. So that was in, I'm trying to remember, May 2024 when I released that particular book volume. And the particular piece that refers to Karl was from April 27th. So yeah, May 2024 or thereabouts was when I released it. And in terms of that, I was familiar with Karl before that point, and even back in like 2018, I knew about him, and I heard about King of Kong. And 2021, 2022, while I was still living in Florida, I learned about him looking into Billy Mitchell more extensively. I had heard about it, again, back in 2018, 2019, thereabouts, when I was still in grad school. But by the time 2021, 2022 came around, I started to learn more about it. I learned about him looking into other people like the Completionist and various allies of Billy Mitchell that he was investigating while being sued by Billy Mitchell. So I had heard about all of that, and this writing that I did from 2024 into 2025, I started to address that. But I also, around the same time I was learning about that stuff, I wrote modularity in class, and approaching May 2024, I learned that Karl Jobst was racist. He was racist, and he had fascist friends that date back 15 years or thereabouts, basically, from his GoldenEye speedrunning days in the 20-aughts. And this is something that I talk about in Those Who Walk Away from Speedrunning, and I've already read this entire piece out, but I'll just read this paragraph here. From r/speedrun, the drama starts in 2021 when the person known as Tomato Anus severed ties with Karl due to some company Karl kept, i.e. a neo-Nazi named RWhiteGoose. There's a lot of messages going back years regarding the server Goose was on, but those are from someone whose own testimony isn't the most reliable. Take a look at them if you want and decide for yourself what to think. Karl was friends with this person for years, frequented the server with other like-minded people. There's also Karl's explaining away of his own racist language. And there's a person on the subreddit, MTech1, who talks about Karl and how Karl would apologize for using the N-word in Australia, trying to say that it wasn't racist to do that, which is absolutely not true. Talking about his token wife, his token Asian wife, talking about his Orientalism with his son, calling him Maximus Wong. And yeah, so Karl Jobst was definitely a racist person back then, and he never came out or talked about it. So there was an implication, specifically, here's just one example where this specific image. So RWhiteGoose is the open fash. And about 4 years ago, he was exposed for being a neo-Nazi, essentially. And then Karl Jobst was implicated in one of the images. And yeah, so there's some racial slurs being used here. And Karl and RWhiteGoose are talking about that and saying, oh, it's reverse racism if we can't use racial slurs, essentially. So, Karl Jobst was someone who, this is just one example, but this is a conversation happening between him and someone that he knew for years who's a neo-Nazi. The difference is, from what I understand, is that RWhiteGoose actually came clean and talked about it and tried to distance himself from his own abusive past in a way that seemed productive. It seemed medicinal. Like, he's like, yes, I used to do this and I'm moving away from it. I don't know, like Content Cop or someone like that, where they're like, I used to be more reactionary than I am now. Whereas Karl just swept it all under the rug and acted like nothing ever happened. So, as far as all of that goes, around the time I was writing this particular piece in my book series, and then after that, when I wrote this follow-up where I was compiling not just all of my Metroidvania research, but I was compiling all of my speedrunning stuff, and basically describing why I walked away from speedrunning but kept the Metroidvania stuff, and it had to do with how I was treated when I was doing a lot of my research in 2020, 2021, 2022, thereabouts, before I came out as trans. And so while I was doing these pieces, I learned more and more about Karl, including, that, he's racist and sexist and just has neo-Nazi friends, which, if you have Nazi friends, like people that you associate with in private or in public, that makes you a Nazi. Like, it just does. Like, it's this thing, if you're like a white moderate Republican or a Democrat, and you have alt-right friends that you're buddy with behind the scenes, congratulations, you're a collaborator with the alt-right. You're a Nazi. You just have more masks. That's it. You're normalizing it by befriending such individuals. And Karl doesn't seem to openly espouse a lot of that stuff in public, but from what I understand, his Discord server is another matter. It's definitely a place where he still is bigoted, essentially. So yeah, that basically covers me learning about this stuff and talking about it more recently. But I remember hearing about some of this stuff, back in 2024, let's say, was when I really found out about it. But this goes back to at least 2020, 2021. And the abuse in question, according to MTech, Karl covered his tracks, whereas Goose apologized. Karl, on the other hand, has never apologized and instead lied about it. Even worse, once on Discord he was ranting about people accusing him being racist, and he brought up his Asian wife as his anti-racist shield. Do I need to mention that Derek Chauvin had an Asian wife? It's really beyond me that the community continues to ignore this guy's behavior. And yeah, that's absolutely it. It's like with me, before 2024 or thereabouts, I would talk about Karl and his investigations into Billy Mitchell, insofar as I didn't really know about the Apollo Legends stuff just because it only got mentioned once back in 2021, I think. And apart from that, all I heard about was Billy Mitchell being a cheater, and I thought that, oh, this makes Karl look really good because Karl was investigating all of this, and his investigations were really thorough. Same idea with Gerard the Completionist, where I was like, okay, this, and he also looked into someone named Zarda, I think, who was a expert witness in regards to Billy Mitchell, and Zarda was a sex pest, and the research seemed really solid on Karl's part. So up until this point, I had cited Karl before that when writing my book series, essentially from 2022 to 2023. I talked about him in a more positive light just because it hadn't been brought to my attention that he was a Nazi, basically, a Nazi and a sex pest. But by the time 2024 happened, I started looking into that and incorporating that into my work. And I would talk about other speedrunners besides Karl, of course, but with this particular video, I actually watched Karl Jobst speedrunning pussy video, basically, where he talks about speed dating and pickup artistry, and it's like, hello, you absolute legends, I'm going to teach you how to lay pipe, basically. And which is cringe unto itself. There's a lot of problems with pickup artists who are historically white supremacists, sexist bigots, there's obviously a gradient with that. Some are more problematic than others. Karl leans into the more problematic side because he's a Nazi on top of being a sex pest. And it only makes him more hypocritical when examining Zarda and Billy Mitchell and other people and calling them out for sex pest behaviors when, he's a sex pest. But the reason I'm mentioning all of this now is because Karl Jobst is someone that people are looking into more than they did in the past. And they're like, hey, newsflash, everyone. Karl Jobst used to be a pickup artist. And it's not just me saying this back in 2024, but people are saying it right now. So if you go to different individuals, specifically, we have some different videos here where people are responding to Karl Jobst's defense video. But you also have Smash JT live, and this particular person is responding to Karl Jobst and his dating advice video. And so the same video that I responded to, but also Karl Jobst lost. I actually saw Smash JT initially talk about Karl Jobst, and Karl Jobst was someone who was actually attacked by Smash JT, or Smash JT exposed Billy Mitchell and was talking about him in such a way that in his defense video, I don't know if I can find the image here, just kind of trying to scroll through this video just because it's kind of long, but in any event, Karl Jobst, I'm not seeing it, but it's I know it's in here because it's the full reaction to Karl Jobst and his I lost video as opposed to saying I lied. And it's very important to recognize that Karl Jobst was getting really angry at Smash JT and saying, oh, well, this person said all these things about me that weren't true. And even if we just go to the video that I respond to here of Smash JT's initially, if we go down to the article, I think it's in the description here. Yeah, so there's Karl Jobst lied to everyone, and then there's the follow-up article too. So fans are pissed. This is on April 1st. It's not actually an April Fool's joke. Fans are pissed at Karl Jobst after Troops comes out in Billy Mitchell lawsuit. And honestly, when I saw this and I saw the video, Karl Jobst lied to everyone, it was never about cheating. And Karl Jobst, when he found out about this, he was not happy. And basically, you know, what was insinuated that Smash JT was being disingenuous in his video. And honestly, if you just go through the entire thing, he actually said, I was really surprised to hear about this in regards to Karl, and don't shoot the messenger, but there's just some other people like Keemstar, who's actually cited in this case by the judge himself, but also Nicholas D'Orio, who also says don't shoot the messenger, but Karl Jobst was sued in mid-2021 for the Apollo Legend comment. And, you know, so basically Smash JT was just going through this whole thing and being like, oh, what the hell? But he was trying to be very fair to Karl. But then what ended up happening, and the article here, this is the article, and this is the video, which is, it links to the live stream, it links to the written article, and then it just kind of talks about some more stuff on top of that. And I responded to that and thought about it myself. Now, at this point, I already knew about the bigoted stuff with Karl Jobst and Goose and Tomato Anus and, you know, all of that. So I already had my mind made up about Karl back in, you know, 2024, actually. So by the time I found out about this is just confirming what I was already doing in my own research. But it's important to note that other people like Smash JT, after they mentioned what happened to Karl and they were covering it just because it's the news, they got to cover it. And being relatively fair to Karl, all things considered, Karl in his I Lost video where he took his sweet time and basically said, hi, I lost, and basically crying about that and hiding behind Minecraft footage and saying that he doesn't feel comfortable about that. He actually attacks Smash JT and says, oh, well, this person, he doesn't even name him by name, but he has a thumbnail for Smash JT's April 1st video, basically saying in a really shitty tone that Smash JT had been disingenuous and had attacked him as if it wasn't like well founded. And I thought that Smash JT had actually held back quite a bit. But then Smash JT, after being attacked by Karl, being like, well, wait a second. And now Smash JT is looking into Karl Jobst and his sex pest history, essentially. And they're not doing the best job of looking into it because they're making fun of it, but they're not acknowledging just how sexist speed daters and pickup artists are. But they're so close, this is adjacent to his racist stuff, his neo-Nazi past and his dating advice. Before his YouTube channel, and he was trying to grow that, Karl Jobst was a pickup artist, and he was, a neo-Nazi. And if you're friends with a neo-Nazi, you're a neo-Nazi. That's just how that works. You can't just have it both ways. Either you're against Nazis or you're with them. And in terms of Karl, he grew his channel by going after Billy Mitchell. And there's another video that we're going to look at here in a minute where Billy Mitchell versus Karl Jobst, the trial of the century timeline and hidden gems, no commentary. And this particular video, I don't know if I thought I saw this linked somewhere else, but this is a very comprehensive timeline and it goes over everything. So I thought what we would do is watch this, but there's something very important to note in that in this video, Karl talks about how he built his career on YouTube by going after Billy Mitchell, basically from 2020, 2021 onwards. By the time he was getting sued and the Apollo Legends stuff, Billy Mitchell said, Karl Jobst said about Billy Mitchell that, hey, this guy, he's a gold mine. I can just mine him all day. I can farm him all day, milk him all day, and for money. And he used Billy Mitchell to grow his channel. And it would have been fine if he was just accusing him of cheating, but he was actually being sued very early on in his YouTube career, relatively speaking, a couple of years within his YouTube career, because I think I saw one of his videos back in 2018 when I was still in grad school, but relatively early into his career. He mentioned being sued by Billy Mitchell, and then he just fucking farmed the shit out of Billy Mitchell while he was being sued multiple times. And he only ever talked about the lawsuits, the cheating stuff, but he never talked about Apollo Legend. And Billy Mitchell's lawsuits, as far as him saying, oh, well, I didn't actually cheat, those got thrown out. But the thing that didn't get thrown out was the stuff about Apollo Legends, where Karl Jobst basically implies, he makes a causal argument implying quite heavily imputations, as the judge would call it, the imputations are that Billy Mitchell was responsible for, according to Karl Jobst, for Apollo Legends, committing suicide. And there were these videos that Karl made in 2021 where he made those arguments. And then he didn't take them down right away, despite knowing that the information was false. And he tried to keep it up. He took it down, and then he put it back up and basically defied, he went against his own, what do you call that? A retraction. He retracted it, and then he put it back up anyways and just tried to be slick about it. And was going after Billy Mitchell, and it was a crusade against him. And say what you will about Billy Mitchell, he's a cheater. He cheated at Pac-Man, but he did not sue Apollo Legend for a lot of money. Like, he sued him, but he did not require that he pay a large cash settlement. And that was the argument that Karl Jobst made to try and suggest that Billy Mitchell had caused Apollo Legend to commit suicide. So, it's a perfectly, it's a defamation lawsuit. It's perfect ground for suing someone for defamation in regards to Billy Mitchell. Perfectly legitimate. Is it the kind of thing that most people will do? No. But, if you're someone with a reputation and you have the means to do so, this wasn't actually a slap lawsuit. There were other slap lawsuits. The cheating lawsuits were definitely slap lawsuits from Billy Mitchell, but this one wasn't. And this was actually a really shitty thing that Karl Jobst was doing, and he was using it to grow his own channel. He was trying to make Billy Mitchell look bad. And right here, he actually talks about how in the Australian court system, if you beat someone in a defamation lawsuit, they have to pay your legal expenses. And Karl Jobst's legal expenses, LUS is a lawyer who talks about how Karl Jobst, he's covered him a lot, and there's some different videos, but there's one video where he asks the question, did Karl Jobst run a legal bill versus Billy Mitchell well over $600,000? Like, it was not a usually expensive lawsuit, and one theory is that he did this on purpose because if he beat Billy Mitchell, Karl Jobst would be awarded not just damages, but the legal expenses that he had to pay. He would get paid all of that money. Now, to be fair, he's doing that basically. That money went towards his lawyers already, so he's just getting the money back. But he's doing that to cost. He's not getting money because the lawyers are already paid, but he's doing it to cost Billy Mitchell money. So this is something that LUS, who's a lawyer himself, he's a patent attorney. So he's a lawyer. He's not just some guy who says he's a lawyer. He's not someone like Karl Jobst who's acting like a journalist. He's an actual lawyer. And, LUS kind of rubs me the wrong way because there was one thing that Karl Jobst was right about that LUS was not right about, whereas Karl Jobst was investigating Zarda, and Zarda was an expert witness of Billy Mitchell's, who was a sex pest, and Karl Jobst was absolutely right in pointing that out. Whereas LUS is like, come on, man, he didn't do anything wrong. And I'm like, yeah, he did. He was lying about the cheating stuff, which I don't really care about, but he was also like a bona fide sex pest. So LUS, was kind of doing the both sides sort of argument. He was sort of sweeping that under the rug and not really acknowledging it. So, that was a particular W for Karl Jobst, and LUS was just kind of ignoring that. But LUS is a lawyer, and he's absolutely right that Karl Jobst lost a lot of money, and he essentially was gambling in such a way that he could have a crusade against Billy Mitchell and try and make him pay all of this money, to make it sting. And, he gambled with that in a way that, and he talks about how Karl hired an expensive lawyer because the inventor or the founder of Minecraft, a billionaire, was paying his legal expenses, but then the manager for said person found out what Karl was doing and running up his legal expenses, and he's like, okay, this is stupid, and they pulled the plug on that. And so there's a lot of stuff like that, and LUS talked about that. It's all very good stuff. But here's a point where Billy Mitchell or Karl Jobst from his own mouth mentions he's like, oh, well, Billy better pray that I don't win, because then according to the Australian legal system, he's going to have to pay my legal expenses.
Stop. They need to get taught a lesson. So I am now the last chance that I'm the last chance the public has to punish Billy.
Yeah.
And in Australia, when you lose, you generally almost always get awarded a judgment for costs, which means you got to pay back a certain amount of the costs. And because my costs are so high, Billy's looking at like a bill for like $300,000 or $400,000 when he loses.
Yeah. So at this point, he's like, look, he needs to be taught a lesson. And so Karl is white knighting, he's virtue signaling. And keep in mind, he's a sexist, racist bigot with neo-Nazi friends that he covered up stuff about. And he's acting like he's better than Billy Mitchell. He's acting like he's better than the completionist and various other people that he's investigated, including that Zarda individual who's the expert witness for Karl, for Billy Mitchell in the cheating lawsuits. Karl is acting like he's better than all of these people when he's a sex pest on top of being a bigot. So he's bad faith. He's a bad actor. But, right here in this particular video, and we're going to end up watching this whole thing just because it gives a concrete timeline of everything that Karl did in terms of just like his shitty behavior. So this is the most comprehensive one. And there are a lot of other videos that I wanted to give a quick shout out. We don't have time to watch them. Gen X Gamer is a YouTuber that I really enjoy who talks about like the emotional side of things. He's someone who talks about Karl Jobst in a way. You have other people who talk about it, like Hazink and Smash JT and Bumba and a couple other people that I have in this playlist. But they're all white. And one thing that I'll say about Gen X Gamer is that, you know, they're not white. They're Hispanic, at least Mexican American, from what I understand. And they talk about things in terms of, like, you know, okay, when they're responding to Karl, they talk about Karl like refusing to eat crow, doubling down, not apologizing, not saying that he lied. No, he says I lost as opposed to I lied. And it's not just him saying that, you know, because this person smashed JT, and in his videos when he's responding to the whole thing, he's like, this whole thing is carefully worded. You know, he's like, Karl Jobst is like, I lost, or the thing that I said was incorrect, as opposed to I lied to everyone. And he's like, he doesn't. It's like what Karl's saying, I lost, is technically true, but it's a lie of omission when he says that he was actually lying to his audience by omitting the reality that he was actually being sued for the Apollo Legends suicide and the imputations against Billy Mitchell, and that's why he was trying to raise all this money, this $200,000. And I understand, the way I understand it, according to LUS, is that the person, the Minecraft person, and the legal expenses were as high as they were by the time they were this high, and by the time that Karl was borrowing this money on the GoFundMe, he had been cut off by the Minecraft person, or the manager of the Minecraft person. And so he lied to everyone about that. And like, so you have people like Smash JT that are talking about that, and they're also talking about, they're all starting to realize, because they didn't take more than 2 seconds to look into Karl Jobst, or they knew about it but they just didn't say anything. They're like, oh, ha ha ha, this is funny. Well, now they're pulling out this ammunition, they're loading their guns, and they're going to work. And this person is saying it, this person Hazink is saying it. So you have these smaller YouTube channels that are saying it, that have, you know, like 20,000, 15,000 subscribers. And the even smaller channel that I like, Gen X Gamer, they're a racial minority that's talking about this kind of stuff, and talking about it in terms of like, look, you know, Karl, you're not taking accountability for anything. You're doubling down. You were gambling with the legal system and you lost, and you're doing some really awful things. And I really, really like Gen X Gamer, because they bring, you know, a minority perspective to what Karl is doing. And Karl being a white supremacist, I think we should listen to minorities who are talking about this more than just white people, or white straight people. And when I write about Karl, I'm a white trans person. And when this person, Gen X Gamer, talks about Karl, they're a Hispanic YouTuber, a Hispanic Mexican American YouTuber. So it's more important to listen to people like Gen X or myself, because we have less incentive to lie, unless we're tokenized. But if we're not tokenized, we're not going to sweep stuff under the rug. And one thing that I'll say about Smash JT is that, like, look, some of this stuff you had to have known about, and you're only just saying it now. And it's just because some of the stuff just wouldn't affect you if you're not a woman, if you're not trans, if you're not a racial minority. Chances are either you didn't hear this, or you're going to protect someone who's like you are, which is a white cis-het man. And, you know, so the fact that you're not saying anything until now, I think, is a little bit more suspicious. But at the same time, you know, you are taking Karl to task now, and this stuff. People are starting to mention that Karl Jobst is a sex pest, but I haven't really seen anyone really talk about the racial stuff quite so much. So I actually reached out to Gen X Gamer, and if we go to my channel here. Let me scroll down and see if I can find it. Yeah, so specifically, I had mentioned I used to, on one of his videos, Karl Jobst Approach Her Now Live Tour 2025. So Gen X Gamer was basically making fun of Karl for being a sex pest and saying, oh, well, now that you're having this hard time, you can start peddling your pussy speedrunning basically in 2025. And I respond, basically last night, I used to interview speedrunners a lot for my PhD research. Karl's the sort that soured me to the practice, so I've been gathering responses to his trial, including yours, LUS, and a couple others. I really enjoy yours for the emotional layman side of things. You should look into his racist side of things and his Nazi buds while you're at it, but thank you for mentioning his pickup artistry. So, Gen X Gamer says, is there somewhere I can read up on it? YouTube post, perhaps? And so I say, okay, it's on Reddit, it's on his old Discord links, but then in the community posts, I actually, because if you try and mention links in YouTube comments, a lot of times they'll get like deleted or they just won't show publicly. So to make sure that he sees it, I tagged him and I said, you asked if there was any racist stuff on Karl. These are the primary sources I've referenced, mainly EM Tech One's post and clipped images from subreddit r/speedrun. Too long, didn't read. Karl was longtime friends with RWhiteGoose, a neo-Nazi who got exposed about 4 years back. Karl deleted about 15 years worth of evidence, and much of that side of things is lost to time, but not all of it. Granted, these are primarily Discord screen caps, so take them with a grain of salt. I.e., the most concrete of these claims is Jobst being a pickup artist because those videos are still online. But given Karl's shitty behavior as of late, chiefly his hypocrisy with Billy Mitchell, the completionist, and himself, and his scummy behavior with his sponsors, Ari War Thunder and Raid Shadow Legends, etc., it's not exactly a stretch. He's a notorious sleazebag with some really, really awful former friends. RWhiteGoose, who's a neo-Nazi. So, this is something that I mentioned in regards to Gen X, and I'm like, hey, but I will say that, some of these people, like, there's one video on here.
Oh, I want to.
Yeah, this guy, Kui Man, he gives me kind of alt-right vibes because he uses the R slur, and he's just kind of, he's ableist in ways that are very typical of white cis-het men. So he's attacking Karl Jobst and laying into him pretty fucking hard, but then he's being bigoted while he's doing it, whereas someone like Gen X Gamer doesn't really do that, and he's also coming from a more marginalized position, so I think he's worth listening to more. And then someone like Smash JT, who's kind of like, well, what the heck, man, I was kind of giving you the benefit of the doubt, and now you're going after me, Karl. What's going on? And so Smash JT is just learning about Karl Jobst and his dating advice, or he's just talking about it for the first time. But I remember when I first learned about this, and I learned about this sooner than someone like Smash JT did, because again, I'm more marginalized, and as far as the research that I do and the speedrunning stuff, I just found out about it sooner. Even though I found out about it years after it happened, I still found out about it about a year and a half before Smash JT did. And the only reason that Smash JT is talking about it is because Karl lost his lawsuit, where I was talking about it well before then. And so I still appreciate Smash JT, though. As far as the white cis-het guys, he's better than Kui Man.
Hello, you absolute legends.
And Hazenk here, he's just like a dude bro with a Dragon Ball Z shirt and a Marvel hat. He looks like, a centrist YouTuber, the kind of guy who might get mad if you go at a Gamergate type. I don't want to judge a book by his cover, but he's, just at a first glance, he looks like a cis-het guy. Cis-het guys make me a little bit nervous, if I'm being honest. But as far as I can tell from what I remember watching this video, this particular individual didn't really drop any slurs while he was responding to Karl Jobst, and he's just kind of like, okay, Karl, your apology sucks. Basically, all of these people, Smash JT, Gen Z, or Gen X Gamer, Bumba, 5, Lotham, Kui Man, all these people were talking about Karl Jobst, and basically the piranhas are feeding on the dead whale, and it's a feeding frenzy, and all of these predominantly white cis-het guys are going after Karl and critiquing him. This guy and Smash JT are, talking about it in ways that are less problematic than Cooey Man. Whereas Gen X Gamer, I really, really appreciated. So I just wanted to give him a shout out and say that I really enjoyed just the emotional side of stuff and being like, look, you have to stop doing what you're doing. This is really scummy of you. And he's just learning about the sex pest stuff, and he's milking it. He even had a video here where he talks about let me see here. Approach Her Now Live, where this video, when he opens it, he says, "Hey Karl, it's milking time," or "Here's your breakfast." And he has the cow on his thing, milk, 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 and read my book. I know a lot about lawsuits, and approach her now. So people are basically dragging Karl pretty fucking hard at this point. They're calling him, he went down the dark side Phil path, not Gen X Gamer, but Karl Jobst. And Karl Jobst is like, I didn't do anything wrong, and he's just doubling down. And they're comparing him to Dark Side Phil, but also Low Tier God. And other people like Penguin Zero and some ordinary gamers who are pretty awful people themselves, but they're backing away from Karl. So Karl is kind of being pushed into lolcow territory, and Gen X Gamer is kind of milking that a bit, and it's like, okay, do what you got to do, my guy. But at the same time, I really do, in regards to the response video too.
Burden, and he ultimately took
Karl Jobst response video, where he kind of goes through the entire Karl Jobst video, and this person, they're disabled from what I understand, so the vocal cords get tired more easily, from what I understand, and they're not able to talk as long, so they go through part of Karl's video, and then they have a follow-up video where they go through the rest of it. But I really recommend Gen X Gamer out of all of these people for the emotional side of stuff. If you want the legal side of stuff, LUS has got you covered. He's a centrist lawyer, and he has a lot of really annoying buy, sell, hold stocks. Do you like Tesla? Have you ever been sued? Are you worried? Trump versus Harvard. Like, he sounds, would you vote for JD Vance? Like, he's not actually attacking JD Vance or Trump. And he's a fucking lawyer, so as far as that goes, I think he kind of sucks. Not only that, he's a retired lawyer who's going into AI, so he's kind of a token Asian lawyer. But in regards to what he says about Karl, it's like, if you want to learn if someone's a shitty lawyer, you're not going to go and talk to a car mechanic, or you're not going to go and talk to a speedrunner like Karl. You're going to talk to a lawyer. Granted, he's a patent attorney, and as opposed to like a criminal defense lawyer, but a patent attorney is closer to the kind of lawsuit, a defamation lawsuit. And he's said in his own videos that he's from America, not Australia. But it's definitely a good place to start. There's a lot of good coverage as far as that goes. He's he's a centrist. He's kind of a token Asian centrist, and he sucks in his own kind of way. But as far as the coverage on Karl, it's actually pretty solid. As if for us lay people who aren't lawyers, he's definitely a lot more trustworthy than Karl is, for instance. So yeah, LUS is the lawyer. The emotional side of things is Gen X Gamer. And then if you wanted a token cis-het white guy, then Smash JT is, he's actually, he's the fair and balanced white dude who's actually not really pulling any punches. And, he's making fun of Karl as far as the dating advice goes. But then you also have him going over a full reaction to Karl Jobst's I Lost video. And I actually really enjoyed Smash JT. He kind of swept himself under the rug, or he's just kind of like, oh, he's my friend, and I just had no idea he was a Nazi. Like, okay. And, but at the same time, if you want to understand Karl for being a careful white guy who's keeping his cards close to his chest, then Smash JT is a good person to listen to, because he's also a white cis-het guy who's keeping his cards close to his chest. He used to be friends with Karl, and now he's kind of critiquing his former friend, distancing himself from him and being like, like when I say that they were friends, from what I understand, they were work associates. Like, they weren't like friends outside of work. But even so, like the way that he's talking about him, it's a different perspective, and I think it's a valuable one. It's not perfect by any stretch, but it is definitely worth looking into. And I think that's about everything. But there was one final thing that I wanted to do, and that was, we are going to watch Arkamatt Games and Scandals, Billy Mitchell versus Karl Jobst, The Trial of the Century, Timeline, and Hidden Gems. No commentary. I'm thinking about just watching the whole thing, but on second thought, it's like I'm debating it.
As to punish Billy.
So if we go to the start here, this covers everything that you need to know, basically from 2020, 2021 through the lawsuit period to after the lawsuit was settled. And there's a lot of good stuff in here. So we can start watching it. I don't necessarily want to comment too much on this, but I do want to respond to it a little bit. Also, it's just a nice little video. It has good music and the editing is nice. This is just pure evidence. There's no commentary, nothing. This is just Karl and company speaking for themselves.
It's really important to remember that Mitchell has never had a lawsuit actually go the distance and result in his favor. I have done absolutely nothing wrong. I got one little detail wrong and paid him a large sum of money.
I like that too. The way that this is edited, where he'll say one thing and then they'll put another thing by it that you don't even have to make an argument. Like, you don't want to gild the lily. If you have something that already speaks for itself, just let it speak for itself. So the editing for this is very well done.
This was all too much of a burden, and he ultimately took his own life.
Publishing the retraction at the time and in the manner he did was an aggravating feature of his conduct.
When you know the whole situation, it's really fucking stupid.
And Karl, expect me.
I would never make such a claim unless I had very good evidence to support my position. Hello, you absolute legends. The madman finally did it. If this goes the entire distance, the final price tag could be well over $100,000, especially given that I have a really good team of lawyers.
That gets views, that gets clicks.
So if I eventually win, which does seem extremely likely, Mitchell should have to pay back a lot of money.
Without a single...
And also, real quick here, I'm noticing that Lebrowski also has a video.
Mr. Jobst clearly intended to be the knight who slew the Mitchell dragon. Unfortunately...
Oops.
Mr. Jobst clearly...
In my previous video, which was mostly focused...
Karl Jobst versus Billy Mitchell battle runs so deep that you wouldn't believe that someone would spend their whole weekend doing research on...
I'm GBF, alright, but it stands for Garrett Bobby Ferguson.
Sorry, I meant Billy Mitchell. A bunch of you may not be familiar.
Okay, so this is another timeline video. I just wanted to sort of look at this one and be like, okay, I haven't actually seen this one. This one is longer. This one has a commentary. It's about twice as long. And this is Billy Mitchell versus Karl Jobst. And this is the full timeline. So as far as that goes, this is another one perhaps worth checking out if you want commentary to go with it. But we're just going to keep watching this one. This one doesn't have any commentary, but it does have timestamps. So again, when they give something, they have the month, the day, and the year. So very, very handy.
Source, except a now deleted post on Reddit.
Billy supposedly wants to prove to the world that he didn't cheat and that Twin Galaxies were lying. Trial is his opportunity to do this. September 16. Mark your calendars. This is going to be big.
That gets views, that gets clicks.
An American video game champion is suing a Brisbane YouTuber over cheating claim.
And this is something that is kind of going on too, where the media kind of took what happened and ran with it. And one thing that Karl said was, oh, well, people, these mass media circuits were just saying these things. And it's not my fault that they did that. And I'm like, yeah, actually it is, dude, because you were presenting it in such a way that confused your regular audience. Why would the main media not get confused too? They looked at it the way that you had presented it, and by May 31st, this was well into your defamation lawsuit at this point. You had been talking about this for years in such a way that made it sound like you were, being sued over cheating claims. You never once corrected any of this. And it's like, it's one thing not to talk about your lawsuit at all, but it's, I think, totally acceptable to set the record straight and being like, I'm being sued for this. But the fact of the matter is that he was making money while he was doing this. He was making money off people thinking that he was being sued for cheating. And that's not just the GoFundMe, but also the videos that he was making on his YouTube channel. He talks about how Billy Mitchell is a cash cow. Like we already covered that part in this video. So he's basically milking him. So this is absolutely 100% Karl Jobst's fault. And regardless if he was never going to get rich doing this, he was basically using up a lot of good faith, and by acting in bad faith to seek revenge against his perceived enemy, who he was using to grow his own YouTube channel, and like in bad faith to try and make money. It doesn't matter if his decision was a sound business practice or not. He's still a bad actor.
I couldn't sleep well for a long time. I am already psychologically prepared to lose. My trial will be decided by a judge.
I have concluded that there should be judgment for Mr. Mitchell in the sum of $300,000.
All of his lawsuits have either been dismissed or settled. Note that Billy has never ever actually won.
And today it was game over for Karl Jobst.
Mr. Jobst was also reckless and vindictive in publishing the full video twice.
And the judge, when he was reading the sentence, he started reading.
Yeah, so you have Red Cow Arcade, and these guys kind of they cut their teeth by going after James Rolfe. And they're kind of smug assholes, like, in their own right. Like, they're white cis-het dudes, and they really, really sound like it. And they're, like, just kind of nasty dickwads, basically. But that doesn't mean that they're wrong. And, it's the same thing I said about Smash JT. Smash JT, what I said about Smash JT, it wasn't that he was a snarky dickwad, but just that he's a careful white guy who keeps his cards close to his chest. So it doesn't hurt to see, what other white cis-het people say about Karl Jobst, except in Smash JT's case, he was kind of like the nice version of what these guys are. These guys are much snarkier, but they're also not wrong. I don't like them as people, but when you have a lot of different people who are all kind of saying the same thing about Karl, that's what I meant earlier when I said that this is like lol cow territory. Speaking of red cow, just because you have everyone, on different sides of the spectrum, just in white cis-het male land, where you have all these white cis-het men who are like, oh yeah, he sucks. And you have the assholes, the nice guys, the token minorities, it doesn't matter, who are all kind of saying the same thing. That's not a good look for Karl. Like, I haven't really seen too many videos where people are defending him, except for, from what I understand, on his own Discord server, which I haven't been on. I'm tempted to go on there because, from what I understand, it's public.
All this shit talk that Karl is doing.
Billy Mitchell needs to be destroyed in court.
Billy Mitchell needs to be destroyed in court.
I am the last chance the public has to punish Billy.
I'm the last chance the public has to punish Billy.
I will never let Billy forget this.
I will never let Billy forget this.
Yeah, so, like, it's just a before and after, So this is the sword that Karl fell on. Like, he's the Roman fool, and he's such a smug, unlikable dick. Like, he thinks he's going to win. And, there are points later in his defense video where he even says, getting sued sucks. I think he felt that way after the Minecraft guy pulled out, and he suddenly he was gambling with his own money instead of other people's money, or not just other people's money. And you could hear his tone change, but there are some points I think that I mentioned in this video where he talks about how it sucks being sued, but early on he was actually like really confident, like super happy. And then of course when the rubber met the road, he very much changed his tune. And it's like because he crossed the Rubicon, right? There was this point of no return where it's like, okay, we're going to do this, because he had plenty of time to back off. He could have kept going after Billy Mitchell, just not about the Apollo Legend stuff, but he wouldn't stop doing that.
If I win, oh boy, I'm not going to be a good winner.
If I win, oh boy, I'm not going to be a good winner.
How do we get to the point where one human being hates another human being to the degree Karl Jobst clearly hates Billy Mitchell?
And I'm now of the opinion he is legitimately evil, and hopefully something can be done to stop him soon.
No matter how much I hate someone, I don't want to go there.
So real quick, like he's saying that to all of these big, like I don't know these other three guys, but Penguin Zero or Charlie, what's his name? Like he's a big dude, and this was back in actually July 2021. So he'd been saying this kind of thing for a while. At first he's like, oh, well, I don't want to do this. And his tune earlier on was that he's just a nice, he's a nicer guy, but it became increasingly more vindictive over time.
I hate someone. I don't want to go there.
He is a disgraced cheater that everyone hates, no one wants him around, and I'm the only thing keeping him relevant.
Billy Mitchell is like a content creating machine.
Billy Mitchell appeared to have a plan, and apparently in his case the plan actually...
Some Ordinary Gamers sucks. He's a Zionist, and he's a centrist, bougie asshole, and he's just not a very good person. Just like Penguin Zero, it's the same kind of person. It's like, you notice a lot of these white cis-het guys, like, just because they're going after Karl now does not make them good people. Like, and the only reason he's doing this is to kind of distance himself from that same lol cow status that Karl's falling into. Like, Karl's not going to get canceled over this. Like, in the sense, his YouTube career is not going to end. Like, he's going to keep making money. It's just people are going to look at him differently. But, Some Ordinary Gamers is, even though he's a centrist piece of shit, and a Zionist, and someone who does that, Hassan Bad kind of argument. Hassan Piker isn't someone that I'll critique Hassan Piker myself, but, if Hassan Piker talks about the Houthis, for instance, and then this asshole's like, oh, well, the Houthis are terrorists, what do you think the United States are in terms of what they're doing? So this person sucks, but they're also distancing themselves from Karl, too.
They seem to have worked.
Billy Mitchell, video game player of the century.
Billy Mitchell's not a good person, but again, he's a white cishet guy, and he was doing slap lawsuits as far as the cheating goes and stuff like that, and his entire reputation was built around him being a good gamer. And it's like, well, back in the 80s, there was no way for people to really prove their records anyways, and he's basically like a professional wrestler. That was how Gen X Gamer described it. He's a professional like wrestler, and it's a kayfabe kind of thing. And that's basically what happened with Billy Mitchell and Karl Jobst, except they actually took it into a court of law. But that's the kind of personality that Billy Mitchell is. Is he a good person? No. And a lot of WWF wrestlers aren't good people either. Just watch Behind the Bastards and look into Vince McMahon, for instance, and just a lot of the wrestlers. It's a very particular kind of media circus. And as far as that goes, though, Billy Mitchell is a huge dork. The one thing that he did not do is what Karl Jobst said he did, which is why he won the lawsuit. It's just like, if Karl Jobst had not been so arrogant, because he was making like these value judgments and these moral arguments to the judge, and it's like the judge isn't going to think about things like that. He's going to think about things within the confines of the law. It's like, okay, you did this, you did that. I don't care if he's a scummy person. I care about the legality of his actions according to the law and how I can execute it as a judge. He's arbitrating in that particular way. They're speaking different languages. You know, the judge isn't going to, he doesn't watch YouTube videos. So, like, that was Karl's biggest mistake. Also, it's worth noting real quick that Billy Mitchell is rich. Like, he's rich. He sells hot sauce rich. Like, he's Paul Newman rich. So, I mean, just look at where he lives, you know, and the way that he dresses up. You know, he's, again, not the most likable person, but he's also not liable for what Karl was accusing him of doing. I do like his beard. I will say that. He kind of dresses like a more gothic version of Ryan Gosling from Drive, you know, with the mullet and the black coat. But, you know, so Karl was basically gambling against a guy who could afford these kinds of lawsuits. Karl couldn't. It's a nice dress. Pretty big black. Okay, so that's his wife, token agent wife. She does not look happy. He doesn't look happy either. And you know, the sad reality with this kind of thing is he's a sexist asshole. She's married to him, and it's like, okay, you know, you got the battered housewife. And when I say battered, I just mean like, okay, you're living with an abusive husband. It could just be someone who has total financial control over your life, you know. And Karl definitely strikes me as that kind of individual. I'm not saying one way or the other of what he's done. I've definitely heard things about him in terms of wanting to pay for his wife to get augmented breast surgery, for instance, giving his son a dick joke name, Maximus Wong, you know. So it's like, on one hand, I feel sorry for this woman, but also it's like, I've speculated about that before. Did she know about him when they first met? Maybe, maybe not. But this guy's, you know, he's a pickup artist. You know, I don't know how long they've been married. Maybe she met him after his YouTube career took off. Maybe they were at a convention. I don't know. But I definitely feel sorry for her, just because even if she knows at this point that he's abusive, the reality is that she's married to him. And there's a good chance that she didn't know the full extent about his behavior, or she looked the other way. Either way, you know, it's like a lot of times when people who are being abused will do that, and you know, they have a part to play in their own abuse and what they receive. But you also have to understand, if you're married to someone, you can't just leave them. And Karl strikes me as the kind of person who would be vindictive. You know, he's not a good winner, he's not a good loser. He is exactly the kind of person that you should be afraid to get divorced from. You know, and they have a young child together who just like is 1 or 2 years old at this point, maybe a little bit older now. And it's I do not envy this woman. I will say a lot of people are talking about Billy Mitchell and being like, oh, Billy Mitchell's so cool. It's like, no, Billy Mitchell's a massive dork. I will say slap lawsuits suck, but also, what was he lying about? Cheating at Pac-Man? Everyone probably cheated, you know, at one point. And maybe not. Who gives a shit? Whereas the thing that Karl Jobst was lying about was a lot worse. Now it's like, okay, if you're lying about something and you're cheating at video games and you're doing slap lawsuits are really bad. Whereas, you know, they're not a cool thing to do. But also it's attached to something that really isn't that big a deal. You know, so you're suing people for stuff that's kind of like, you know. So it's, yeah, slap lawsuits suck, but you're not doing a slap lawsuit against someone who's like, it's not an Aaron Brockovich situation where you're like this powerful company and you're a whistleblower who's going after someone for like cutting off grandma's health insurance so that she can't get her chemo and she dies of cancer. Like, that's not what Billy Mitchell did. So even though the slap lawsuit is a shitty thing for him to do, it's ultimately much ado about nothing as far as I'm concerned. Sorry, speedrunners, it's not that big a deal. Whereas Karl Jobst, on the other hand, was again fleecing his own fans to basically run up a crusade fund against someone that he was lying about, including one of his own friends. Like, he was friends with Apollo Legend, and he was using the name of Apollo Legend to try and fleece his fans so that he could have his crusade, his day in court against Billy. And, you know, that's like a really shitty thing to do. That's worse, in my opinion. And it's unto itself a slap lawsuit of sort. He could say, oh, well, I was on the receiving end of this, but it's the same kind of like bad acting, but you're doing it against people who trusted you. You know, you're stabbing them in the back. Whereas Billy Mitchell was at least being straightforward about his own douchebaggery. You know, these are kind of like Darwin Awards, but, you know, in terms of who's worse in this dubious contest, I would say that Karl is immeasurably worse than Billy Mitchell. Like, Billy Mitchell, I don't like him as a person exactly, but it's hard not to look at him in hindsight and just be like, well, what did he ultimately do? Okay, he sued some speedrunners because they were going after him, and he had no chance of winning those anyways, you know. And it's like, that's the nature of slap lawsuits. And again, it's a shitty thing to do, and it's not something I condone. But aside from that, you know, is he openly racist? Is he openly bigoted like Karl is? As far as I can tell, not really, you know. And now, I haven't spent a lot of time looking into Billy Mitchell, but Karl, on the other hand, as we're starting to learn, if you look at some of these other channels that I've talked about, is actually, you know, after the defamation lawsuit, he's lost that aura. You know, people aren't afraid to go after him, and they're starting to dig. You know, the pickup artistry is just the beginning of that, if they continue to dig.
Oh, Billy Mitchell always has a plan.
The grapevine effect is the likelihood that the defamatory imputations have been and will be repeated to other people over time, and they may even surface again after this judgment. The grapevine effect arises particularly in cases of defamatory imputations made on social media or other internet sites, including YouTube.
I like the way this is organized too. You know, it's chapter by chapter, and it goes over it bit by bit. No commentary at all.
Jobs released a video downright loaded with false defamatory statements. The most heinous.
So this is in June 3rd, 2021, and this is basically the beginning of things.
Accusation related to Apollo's passing. In the video, Jobs outright states that I drove Apollo to suicide. In his words, he may as well have just said murder. For those of you who haven't seen it, here's the clip.
He also sued YouTuber Apollo Legend for $1 million. I haven't spoken about this publicly, but this lawsuit ultimately ended with Apollo giving in and settling with Mitchell.
Yeah, so it's important to recognize too, original video with offending words, May 6, 2021, they're suing everyone. I love the editing in this video, it's great. You know, because, you know, commentary videos like mine or anyone else, like, we're all just kind of like winging it and just, okay, well, he said this, now I'm going to say this. This video just has everything in order, and it's great, and it's just very visually simple. It's perfect. And something like this would take a lot of time to assemble and put together, but here it is, you know. And it's like, if Karl Jobst was going to do a video defending himself, he should respond to this, because this isn't just like a smoking gun. This is like a smoking salvo. This is like a firing squad of smoking guns.
He was forced to remove all of his videos about Mitchell's cheating and paid him a large sum of money. This left him deeply in debt, which required him to find extra work. But with his ongoing health issues, this was all too much of a burden, and he ultimately took his own life.
This cannot be ignored.
Much of a burden.
So Karl posted this video twice, even after being told there had been no money involved during the settlement. So he took it down. He did a retraction, and then he put the video back up. And this is saber rattling. You know, he knew that he was wrong, and he can't claim ignorance anymore. And then he puts it back up. And I think a lot of people like Smash JT, when they talked about the defamation lawsuit and the judge's ruling in Australia as far as how things ultimately wound up, and Karl lost the maximum amount of money, and the maximum amount of money being, it was like 350,000 Australian dollars or something like that. You know, it was basically just a very small amount of money, all things considered, that he lost, not to mention his own lawyer fees. And if you combine all of that, it's like 600,000 US dollars, not Australian dollars. And Smash JT himself said, hey, this is kind of crazy that he really got took to the fucking cleaners. LUS says the same thing. He got fucking destroyed. Like his lawyers did the worst possible job. You could have a monkey, hire it, and it could just shit all over the courtroom, and it could do a better job. So LUS, an actual practicing lawyer, was like, no, these lawyers did absolutely awful against Billy Mitchell and his team. And one reason these people, like Smash JT in particular, said the reason that Karl Jobst got took to the cleaners so badly was because of him, after the retraction, putting the video back up. He had been asked not to put it back up, and then he did it anyways. You know, so that that's a really awful thing to do during a defamation lawsuit. Just like, don't do that.
And he ultimately took his own life.
This cannot be ignored. I plan to respond the way that everybody anticipates for me to respond. And Karl, expect me.
We're joined by a special guest, Karl Jobst, the man currently being sued by Billy Mitchell. How's that going?
Mm-hmm. Fantastic.
So he's like, yeah, I'm getting sued. And you can see the looks like on this guy's face. I don't know who the hell this person is, or this guy, but they're both like, ha ha ha, oh, infectious smile, oh, you know. And like he was ready to go to war at this point. He was so confident that he would win. But he's acting like he's smarter than he is. You know, and this is something that GamerX talks about in his video, in his response to Karl Jobst saying, I lost. Where Karl Jobst, in his I lost video, GamerX is like, well, no, dude, you're not a lawyer. He who represents himself has a fool for a client. And Karl Jobst is a fool because he fucked around and found out. You know, it's like, you could see him like super confident early on. He's like, yeah, I'm totally gonna win. And he not only thinks that he's smart, but he's playing like dirty. You know, he's misleading people about what he's talking about through lies of omission. He's trying to get funding after the Minecraft guy decides not to fund him anymore. And he straight up, not only is the information that he posted incorrect, but it was like through outright lies and lies of omission that he posted it, not just once but twice. You know, so he's not just arrogant, but he's bad faith. He's a bad actor. He's a neo-Nazi. He's a con artist. You know, that's the thing that I've said over and over about him. Karl Jobst is a con artist. Doesn't mean he has to be especially effective. I mean, Donald Trump has gone bankrupt like 8 times. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that he's just a bad actor. And when I say bad actor, I mean bad faith. And he'll do shitty things like this just to appear strong versus his enemy, his perceived enemy. That's it. That's the only point of all of this. It's not about being right. It's not about being wrong. It's about social cred. It's about building connections with various people. And, you know, he had all of these powerful white dudes who all frankly kind of suck, in my opinion. And yet, like, it's like, he's the worst one as far as this goes anyways. You know, it's like they all suck too. And like, I don't have time to really go into that, but it's just like he's preaching to the choir about this kind of stuff, and it doesn't really matter. It's like this is just a song and dance. This is just something. This is white people gambling basically, and he gambled with the long lost, and it's ultimately it's like who cares, right? And it's like, well, if you say that about him and the people that he wronged, then Billy Mitchell has to get a pass too. And it's like, no, I'll critique Billy Mitchell for the things that he actually did. But then Karl Jobst, I'm sorry, or, Penguin Zero, Moist Critical, all of these guys, it's like they all deserve to be critiqued. But just looking at Karl here, talking to all of these guys, it's just like, no, what he was doing was, it's just as petty as any slap lawsuit, and he's acting so fucking smug. And, he's just this total, like, dude, bro. It's the kind of guy that I used to interview. And I just flat out got sick of, talking to people like this just because they suck. They only care about themselves. They care about appearing strong. It's not about being moral or correct. It's not about challenging capitalism. Not about doing anything that helps minorities. It's all about they're the center of their own little universe. And it's really fucking annoying.
So, what is the story? For anybody who doesn't know, can you give us a little backstory on why you found yourself in the middle of a lawsuit?
Try and build my YouTube channel. I felt like the Billy Mitchell thing was a very interesting topic. I mean, I love it. Billy Mitchell is like a content creating machine. At the end of the day, I'm pretty confident, and there isn't much to worry about, but it's still scary. He would just have to sue me in the state that I'm in.
Okay, so he hadn't issued a retraction yet, and he hadn't been sued yet. So of course he's going to sound confident.
Which is like publicly available information. So he knows what state that I'm located in, and then he has to hire an Australian lawyer and go through the Australian courts. It's going to be
understood.
Very difficult. I mean, yeah, it's like doable, but it's going to be a lot more work for him and a lot.
So he thinks, oh, well, Billy Mitchell can't get to me because he's going to have to go through the Australian court system. So Billy Mitchell went through the Australian court system. Billy Mitchell's rich. So I think Karl Jobst kind of underestimated his opponent and overestimated his own abilities.
A lot more expensive.
I did everything to avoid a lawsuit. So, like, I got one little...
That's absolutely not true. And also, I've heard about this Camelot interview before where he's talking on Camelot and basically running damage control. So a couple years later, he's no longer talking to Penguin Zero and his homeboys. He's talking to whoever this guy is. And Camelot, he has a relatively large channel, not nearly as big, but he's talking, and the lawsuit is coming out and things are starting to fall into place at this point. But Billy Mitchell is coming for me and the lawsuit and stuff like that. So I don't know if Camelot was involved in his own side of things. But, the other people that I mentioned who had already talked about Karl, like LUS and GamerX, Smash JT, they talk about this interview, the Camelot interview, as just being full of bullshit.
Detail wrong. Like, I'm not going to go into all the specifics. I will after the trial. Like I got one little detail wrong, right?
Mr. Jobst was reckless in making the allegations. His assertions were based on a fallacy, namely that Apollo Legend had paid Mr. Mitchell a large sum of money. That was simply wrong, and he had no reasonable basis for asserting it. Yet even after finding out the truth, he has continued to assert that the settlement had a negative financial impact on Apollo Legend, and that he still believes that the settlement was a contributing factor to his decision to commit suicide.
I got one little detail wrong.
Mr. Jobst was also reckless and vindictive in publishing the full video twice.
Twice? Yeah, see, that's another thing. It's like, fool you once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So the judge just wasn't having it at that point. He's like, okay, like at this point, Billy Mitchell didn't just shoot himself in the foot, like he shot himself in the head.
At the time he republished it, he had been told by Mr. Mitchell via his response video, by their mutual acquaintance Keemstar, and by Mr. Mitchell's lawyers that what he had said about the payment was not true. But he nevertheless decided to republish the entire video regardless.
One little detail wrong.
And showed an absolute disregard for the truth or for the effect of his video.
Yeah, he doesn't care about the truth because he's a Nazi. He cares about performing. He's a con man. He's a liar. He's a backstabber. You know, he's a once a lolcow, always a lolcow. And the thing is that Karl Jobst had neo-Nazi friends, and he's a racist man. He's a man who has no respect for women or minorities, and who benefited from, the settler colonial project in Australia to the fullest extent, and then basically took that into YouTube to go after someone who was just bigger than him, richer than him. And this is all about vanity. And he used other people, including Apollo Legend, but also his financial backers and his friends, and just he used up a lot of that just so that he could try and win this duel. That's all that he cared about. It's just like, a gunfight at the OK Corral. That's all that this is. It's a jousting match. And he threw a lot of people under the bus to be able to do this. Their reputations before and after they shuffled off this mortal coil, in the case of Apollo Legend, but also money.
On Mr. Mitchell and his reputation. On 29 July 2021, that is about 6 weeks after he finally edited the video and took...
So the video, the offending video, had been up for 6 weeks at this point, and he had been asked to take it down. 6 weeks is a long time. That's a month and a half. The video has been up for the majority of its, the most views it could have gotten have already been gotten at this point.
Took out the offending passage. Mr. Jobst published a video in which he retracted his statement that Apollo Legend had paid Mr. Mitchell money, and he apologized to his viewers for having given them incorrect information.
Now, before I finish the video, I would like to take this opportunity.
So in this Dark Souls video, at the end of the video, which if you're a YouTuber, and this isn't just me talking, SmashJT, LUS, GamerX, all of them say that, at the end of, towards the end of a YouTube video, most people have already tuned out. They'll watch like part of the video, and then like 70 or 80% of people will not stay to the end of the video. And so Karl Jobst would know this. And at the end of like a 30-minute video about Dark Souls, which is about a completely different topic, he's literally like, oh, and by the way, I remember this video where he's like, here's the thing about Apollo Legend. So there's no mention of it in the thumbnail or the title, and he just squirrels it away at the end, and it's just this tiny little blurb that has nothing to do with the rest of the video. He's burying the lead on purpose. This is a form of lying. This is like, basically, it's like you're sweeping it under the rug. You're presenting it in such a way that you know that people won't see it. You're doing that on purpose. This is a form of obfuscation.
Opportunity to correct something that I said in a previous video. Back in May, I talked about the new lawsuits filed by Todd Rogers and Billy Mitchell. In that video, I made the claim that Apollo Legend paid money to Billy Mitchell as part of their settlement. I would never make such a claim unless I had very good evidence to support my position. In response to this, Billy Mitchell released a video accusing me of lying and claimed that no money was exchanged. He didn't provide any evidence to back up this claim, nor did he attempt to get in contact with me to clear up any misinformation I may have had.
So it's really important to remember here, though, that Billy Mitchell is like the one being attacked. So if Billy Mitchell says, no, what you're saying is wrong, it's up to Karl Jobst, who made the initial accusation, to provide evidence. But instead, Karl does a classic abuser tactic. Darvo. Deny, accuser, reverse victim, offender. Where he's like, no, actually, you have to provide evidence. Like, so this is a witch hunt, and the Nazis will be like, no, I'm not the abuser, you're the abuser, and you have to provide evidence to me, even though Karl was the one who made the claim first. And he's presenting it here in his supposed apology video, which was an apology put into a larger video. And he's basically saying, no, this is Billy Mitchell's fault, not mine, even though he was the one who was making the false allegation.
However, I did investigate further, as I would never want to provide false information.
So he's like, well, I investigated further and I would never want to provide false information. You're supposed to do that before you put the accusation up, not after.
To my viewers. I reached out to a member of Apollo's family who graciously agreed to clarify some details. According to them, despite Mitchell's best efforts, Apollo Legend would not pay any money, and in the final version of the settlement, there was no clause indicating that he was required to do so. Therefore, the statement I made in that video was almost certainly incorrect.
Okay. So yeah, it was, and this was something that Smash JT mentioned in his response, because Karl in his I Lost video mentions this specific instance, and Smash JT was like, notice how Karl words this. It was almost certainly incorrect. It's like, no, it wasn't just wrong. You lied, Karl. So, but here Karl is not only swirling away his retraction and having an apology following that retraction, but he's saying, oh, well, what I did was almost certainly incorrect. It's like, no, you're hiding your intent. First off, you know, it was a Darvo tactic against Billy, being like, no, you have to provide me evidence. But then on top of that, he's like, oh, actually, I was almost certainly incorrect. It's like, no, you lied. And, you know, Smash JT and GamerX would be like, you should change the title of your video to I lied. But even now, after the lawsuit is over, Karl is still saying that he lost, that he didn't lie. So he was doing that back in July 2021. And he's doing that now in 2025. You know, it's April 2025, and he's still saying shit like that. So he hasn't changed one bit. He learned nothing from the lawsuit, and he's just using this to present himself as a victim, because that's what Nazis do. Darvo and obscurantism. This is just standard issue Nazi bullshit.
I sincerely apologize for providing false information, and no matter what kind of relationship I have with...
What they call, another way to say that, providing false information on purpose is lying. And that's what you did. You knowingly provided false information. That's lying.
With Mitchell, I do not believe that it is ever justified to lie or mislead.
That's what you did. But you see how he's not calling himself a liar. He's like, I was almost certainly incorrect. He's whitewashing himself.
Mitchell also claimed that I was accusing him of murder. This is certainly not the case. I do have my opinion regarding the impact of the settlement on Apollo's decision, but ultimately it was no one's responsibility but his own.
So here he's throwing Apollo under the bus and being like, no, it's no one but Apollo's fault. I didn't accuse Billy Mitchell of anything. But in his original statement, he literally says, oh, well, Billy Mitchell did this, and he threatened Apollo Legend with this money action, saying, you have to pay me money. And then the strain was too much to bear, and Apollo Legend took his own life. So Karl Jobst isn't saying, you're a murderer. Instead, what he's saying is, you were forcing my friend to pay money, and he took his life because of that. And that's not true. He knowingly said that and lied about it. So he lied, and now after lying and retracting it and supposedly apologizing, he's saying, well, it's nobody. Not only did I not lie about Billy Mitchell, but also it's no one's fault but Apollo Legend. So he's not really defending. He's like, no, it's like Billy Mitchell needed to give me evidence, and he never did. But also Apollo Legend, he sucks. It's his fault, and it's no one but his. And I didn't do anything wrong. It's like that scene from The Lion King with Scar, where it's like he's pointing the finger at the hyenas, and he's like, no, it's totally their fault. They killed your father. I didn't do anything. Like, again, straight up Nazi shit.
The only reason I mentioned it in that video was because I felt like it was important to let you know what happened.
Yes, but again, you lied. You were almost certainly incorrect, which is, translation, you lied. And then when the people you were accusing wrongly called you out on that, you said, well, you have to prove to me that you didn't do what I said you did in bad faith. It's like, what?
As I know many of you enjoyed his videos. And I did a retraction, and my retraction has like millions of views, and the original claim has like 600?
600,000 views or something like that. It doesn't matter. The view count doesn't matter. It's like, if you had like, for starters, the second video largely isn't even about what you're acting like you just came clean. And as we just proved, he, not just me, the person who made this video, and just Karl himself, his own video speaks for itself, where he put the video, the apology, the non-apology, inside a larger video, which got a bunch of views, largely talking about other things. So all of the views that he's talking about had nothing to do with his apology, because at that point most people wouldn't be watching his video. So again, he's still being disingenuous, and he's still acting in bad faith to whoever this guy is. Again, it's continuing his Nazi grift.
Yeah.
So, like, and...
Yeah, and the guy's like, yeah, that makes sense. You know, he doesn't question him, you know, because Karl is trying to rescue and salvage his own reputation while trying to stab Billy Mitchell in the back. I don't even like Billy Mitchell, but Karl's still doing a shitty thing.
You know, I made an offer never to say it again. So I removed it from my video, made a retraction, which got way more views, and that's not enough.
That video did not retract the imputations at all. It simply retracted the statement that Apollo Legend had paid Mr. Mitchell a large sum of money. Mr. Jobst did not apologise to Mr. Mitchell in any way. This retraction video was, in total, a little over 30 minutes long. For the first 28 minutes and 24 seconds, it had nothing to do with arcade gaming, cheating, or Mr. Mitchell. It was about particular speedrunning. It then went blank for a few seconds before it returned with Mr. Jobs' alleged retractions.
I remember that. Yeah, the screen goes black, and then Karl, he's basically waiting for everyone to walk out of the room, and then it's like, wink, wink.
Statement, which itself lasted only about 45 seconds. Mr. Jobs contended that for a number of reasons...
And, you know, in that Camelot interview, he's like, no, I totally did all of this stuff. It's like, bitch, please, you barely did shit, and you framed it that way on purpose. Like, you set a non-apology behind a veil inside a box on the moon. You know, it's like, no. God, I hate Nazis.
The damages I award should be minimal, or at least reduced, due to two mitigating factors. One of those factors was that he published the so-called retraction video. For the reasons I've already mentioned about that video, I do not consider that it had any mitigatory effect. Rather, publishing the retraction at the time and in the manner he did was an aggravating feature of his conduct. Publishing the retraction at the time and in the manner he did was an aggravating feature.
Yes, it was a way of him thumbing his nose at Billy and basically being like, he's trying to do less than the bare minimum and still go after Billy Mitchell. Again, it's the essence of bad faith behavior.
Of his conduct. He did not publish it in a way that would draw it to the attention of the original audience, but instead essentially hid it from view. And of course,
it's again it's hidden from view. It's technically in the video, but it's meaningless at that point.
He did not retract any of the imputations against Mr. Mitchell, nor apologize to him.
And again, the essence of bad faith behavior, where he's like, well, I technically did this. And it's like, yeah, but it had no discernible effect. And the judge saw through this and said what you want about judges even being able to have judgments like this in the first place. You know, that's a topic for another video. But, you know, it's like, yeah, I don't think that judges should exist. I don't think the state should exist. I'm an anarchist. I think that power should be arranged in ways where these kinds of things can't even happen. That being said, the judge took one look at Karl Jobst and was like, oh, well, you're full of shit.
He also sued YouTuber Apollo Legend for one...
Okay, this is the fourth and final version of the video published on June 13th, 2021. So this has been out for about 4 years.
$1 million. I haven't spoken about this publicly, but this lawsuit ultimately ended with Apollo giving in and settling with Mitchell.
So at this point, he was suing him for $1 million. You know, so again, he puts the claim back in.
The lawsuit against Apollo was just as frivolous as the rest, and Apollo definitely would have won in court, but again, he was extremely ill and couldn't handle the ongoing stress. Fighting requires money, which is why I have launched a GoFundMe to support victims of Billy Mitchell's frivolous lawsuits.
The GoFundMe website still contains comments accusing Billy Mitchell of Apollo Legend's death, And furthermore, hello, you absolute legends. I've heard people say, LUS has pointed this out, GamerX has pointed this out, that absolute legends is a reference to the initials of Apollo Legend, Absolute Legend, Apollo Legend. So again, every time he was doing this, he's basically rubbing it in the face of Billy Mitchell. Like, he really didn't like this guy. Billy's an awful person and may have well caused a mentally ill man to take his own life. So there's no way that Karl Jobst didn't know about this. You're a YouTuber, you're going to be reading people's comments. He's doing all of this on purpose. We can pay.
The end of 2021, he filed an official lawsuit, which is still ongoing. I'm not going to say exactly what he's suing me over, but
at this point in 2024, he had a chance to talk about it, but he wouldn't. He's doing that. He's holding his cards close to his chest because he's already asked people for a bunch of money at this point. And he's no longer able to rely on the money from the Minecraft guy. So it's like he's kind of put himself into a corner at this point, but he won't come clean. And Karl never comes clean throughout any of this.
But it is ridiculous. When you know the whole situation, it's really fucking stupid. Yeah. Really stupid.
I like how he's like, well, if you knew the whole situation, it's really stupid, but I'm not going to tell you about it. Just take my word for it. Like, again, this is standard issue obscurantism. This is Darbo. I'm the victim. Billy Mitchell's the bad guy. I can't prove it, but it's really stupid.
Hello, you absolute legends. The madman finally did it. On the 13th of September 2021, the speedrunner Karl Jobst achieved this lawsuit. Until now, Billy Mitchell had only made threats about suing me, but he finally pulled the trigger and has made it official by filing a complaint in the District Court of Queensland, which is the...
So at this point, Karl's already said, oh, well, I'd like to see him try. Let them come. He's getting that in Helm's Deep, and he thinks that he's untouchable, basically. And now he's like, oh, well, I'm under attack. Again, Darbo, right? Oh, I'm under attack. I didn't do anything wrong.
State in which I live. Normally, I'd give you a full breakdown of this kind of thing, but because this one involves me, I'm going to keep...
Yes, see, keeping his cards close to his chest. Like, he's acting in bad faith, because he knows that he was acting shitty, and the more he talks about it openly, like, even just saying what the lawsuit is about.
Keep my cards a lot closer to my chest. What I will tell you is that I am being sued for defamation, and the amount of damages being sought is $450,000. I will definitely be giving you updates as we go, but I don't want to give out too many details.
So he won't even say what the case is about at all. Like, literally nothing. It's just defamation. But, which makes it sound like, because the only thing he ever fucking talked about at this point, and later, was the cheating stuff. So he's doing this on purpose to make it sound like it's about cheating, when in point of fact it's about Apollo Legend. That's why he's keeping his cards close to his chest. He wants people to think that it's about the cheating and that Billy Mitchell sucks, so that he can get money from people and that he can win the case. Like, he's fighting a war on two fronts, because he's winning at the moment in the court of public opinion, but then he also has to convince the judge and the jury and that kind of thing. So it's like there's the actual legal proceedings. So it's like with Hitler during Operation Barbarossa, it's like, okay, let's just kick the rotten door in and everything will come crashing down, according to Stalin and Russia and stuff like that. And Hitler is trying to convince them to invade Russia and do all of this. Don't worry, it'll be super easy. But then there's the actual logistics side of things. And it's the same thing that Billy Mitchell is doing, where it's like, yeah, don't worry, it's like, we just have to do this and we'll win. Kind of, and convincing, taking people for a ride, and by not telling them enough information, such as, hey, it's a really bad idea to invade Russia. Hey, it's a really bad idea to enter a defamation case where you've essentially already lost the case because you've put so much information out there publicly, lied about it over and over, and the judge will have access to all of this. The judge is ultimately the one who decides. And so the thing is that Karl had already like dug his own grave, and then he invited other people to climb in with him without telling them what was going on. It's just stupid. It's just such a shitty thing to do.
Or strategies before I use them in court. I never make claims without ample evidence to support them or some kind of justification.
That's not true. He's lying to his audience.
As everyone knows, lawsuits are extremely expensive. If this goes the entire distance, the final price tag could be well over $100,000, especially given that I have a really good team of lawyers.
And he neglects to mention that he was getting that really good team that he was getting funded for was coming from the Minecraft guy at this point. So to my knowledge, I don't know if I think at this point the funding had stopped, but he still had the team of lawyers. No, he hadn't, it's like he'd only paid them a certain amount of money just because the lawsuit hadn't like been going on for very long, but he had acquired the team of lawyers. He had gotten the green light from the Minecraft dude, and it's like, okay, all of that. But then very shortly thereafter, it stopped. And now he's about to ask these people for money with the expensive lawyers that he has to pay for out of his own pocket. So this is when he asks for money. At least I think it is.
Hello, you absolute legends. As many of you know, in September of 2021, Mitchell filed a $450,000 lawsuit against me over my video titled "The Biggest Con Men in Video Game History Strike Again." In that video, I go over a couple of ridiculous lawsuits that Billy Mitchell and Todd Rogers had filed. I have done absolutely nothing wrong. I have done absolutely nothing.
Okay, so he's lying to his audience again. You have to keep in mind, when someone's a bad actor, like Karl is, they're a bad actor throughout. It's fruit from the poison tree. And in the case of Billy Mitchell, it's like, no, this guy is lying to his audience consistently. We've already established that, he was lying in 2021. He was lying before that. And now he's just continuing that.
Wrong, and I will never be scared into silence by anyone. But until I win in court and defeat this madness, it's going to cost a ton of money. And I'm truly sorry, but I do need help.
Right, okay, yeah, so I'm like, I know there's a point. Here's where it's coming, because he no longer has that Minecraft money. So now he's lying to his audience over and over and over, and being like, I can't tell you what it's about. It's about defamation, even though I've been talking this entire time about something that it isn't to make you think that's what it is, when in all actuality it's about this thing that I only talked about once and I put in this video for 45 seconds, and it's just like, so this is like super scummy behavior, like and this is the guy, he's the Jew hunter from Inglourious Bastards. He's a good detective, he's also very good at misleading people, and he's a psycho basically, and he's the kind of person who would stab you in the back. The Jew hunter is the villain of that movie for a reason, because he lies to everyone and takes advantage of them, and he's very self-serving. Karl's the same exact way, and he's, unlike the actor of that movie, he's actually a Nazi.
Help. So I have set up a GoFundMe to help with my fight against Billy Mitchell, and any help would be immensely appreciated. This GoFundMe is set to cover the rest of my existing lawsuit, plus the new lawsuit that Billy Mitchell says he will be filing.
Now here's the thing though, is that he had a chance, he could have swapped out lawyers at a certain point, but he just stuck with the same expensive team, and he just racked up his costs. Like, it went up to like 600,000 Australian dollars on top of, Billy Mitchell's expenses. And, so it's like everything totaled, it's, like 600,000 USD for everything. But Karl Jobst, instead of just admitting he was wrong and coming clean, continued to mislead people, borrow money from them, being like, oh, it's going to cost this much. After this point, he still kept borrowing money and racking up his expenses. And he fully expected, if he won the case, to force Billy Mitchell to pay for all of this. And it's like, that's like such a shitty thing to do because you're gambling with other people's money, you're lying to them, you're abusing their trust, and you're abusing the name of your dead friend. Like, it's so gross.
There is light at the end of the tunnel, though. In Australian court, generally the loser has to pay a lot of the legal fees of the winning party.
Yep.
So if I eventually win...
This is what he wanted to do the entire time, since at least 2022.
Which does seem extremely likely, Mitchell should have to pay back a lot of money.
Especially around...
So this is what he's trying to do. Like, he's turning this into a jousting match.
The subject of Apollo or cheating. That gets views, that gets clicks, that gets people noticing it, and that makes those guys lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of money in the background as well.
Without a single source, except a now deleted post on Reddit.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning that, you know, he never had any evidence for this. Karl never had any evidence, but that doesn't matter. The evidence doesn't matter. It's all about force of will. It's all about the mythic truth. It's all about I'm right because I say I'm right, and might makes right, and I'm going to lie about it and take advantage of everyone around me to force reality to my will. He's just arrogance personified. That's all that this is. He's not a trustworthy person. People who act in bad faith are the opposite of that. Again, he's a Nazi. So if you're ever confused about any of this, just go back to his past. The past that he deleted insofar as him not just being a pickup artist, because pickup artists deceive women. Nazis deceive everyone. And also pickup artists deceive, the people that they're selling their knowledge to. You want to get laid? Buy my series, and it's like, so they're lying to men too, So he's a con artist in terms of being a pickup artist, but also just being a Nazi and lying about that and being a speedrunner. He cheated. Karl Jobst, cheated with his own speedruns too. So that there's also that, so it's like, just go back to that. If you're ever confused about any of this, this is just a pattern, part unfolding as part of a larger ideology. That's all that this is. It's just symptomatic of him being a piece of shit and having been for his entire adult life.
Now deleted post was his only source where he blamed me for taking the life of another human being.
Karl's playing a dangerous game. Billy forced Apollo Legends to settle and pay him money. Okay, so yeah, that was his evidence, which isn't evidence at all. It's just confirmation bias. He already didn't like Billy Mitchell, and he was just inventing a reason through, force of will and the mythic truth, Nazi approach to things, Darwin obscurantism, etc., to take his enemy to court, literally, through the good graces of other people and their money.
What kind of person am I, even to my family, if I would allow someone to do that unanswered? When somebody thinks they're in a different place and they think there's nothing you can do about it, and they think they can just laugh at you, you can either let them do that or you can pursue it.
Yeah, and in this case, I've had to deal with people who were in other countries who just kind of pulled away. And, I was involved in a legal case with a graphic novel. The person was in another country, and I was having to deal with that years later, and they were acting like, and we eventually, settled it. But, it's like, I get it, from Billy Mitchell's standpoint, that would piss me off, because I've dealt with bad faith people. They're like, well, what are you going to do about it? It's bully behavior. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to take your ass to court. And he did, so it shows also that Karl Jobst isn't very smart, because he thought he was a better liar and that he could pull the wool over everyone's eyes, because that's what con artists do, so that he could basically, this whole thing is just between him and Billy Mitchell.
So we pursued it.
Karl has a family, but he lives in Australia. So he had the better home ground advantage, because it's more of a hassle to go out of the country and file that type of a lawsuit.
He would just have to sue me in the state that I'm in, and then he has to hire an Australian lawyer and go through the Australian courts. I mean, yeah, it's like doable, but it's going to be a lot more work.
And basically he's like, well, you can sue me, but if, and in the meantime, I'm just going to make money off you. And then he was making money off the lawsuit on top of it. So it's like Karl is, the more I never, it's like before starting this video today, I already didn't like Karl, but it's like my opinion of him is not improving.
For him and a lot more expensive.
The attorney told me, he says, every time somebody makes a statement, don't get upset. Remember, this is defamation. And every single statement, every single YouTuber who takes his video and reproduces it, which is a lot, every single one of them is a gift. In the end, it's a gift. Because he's wrong.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. It's like when you're defeating people who are acting in bad faith, you have to turn them into object lessons. You have to, demonstrate that they're wrong, and you have to turn their own weapons, words, against them. And that's what Billy Mitchell did, to his credit. And I will say, Billy Mitchell, you can critique him for other things, but as far as this goes, I've been in a very similar position myself, and I completely understand his point of view. Dealing with a scummy piece of shit like Karl Jobst, I'd be like, well, fuck you. It's like, all right, you want to tango? Let's tango. Challenge accepted.
He cannot possibly defend the fact that he said I took the life of a human being.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm not going to let it go, no matter what.
I've been trying.
Yeah, and he's absolutely right. It's like, there's no way you can defend that.
To get a trial since June. But Billy keeps running away. He and his lawyers always do something which makes the process take even longer.
So yeah, apparently Karl Jobst was actually gunning for Billy. I've been trying to get a trial, and he was trying to rush through it. And Billy was just taking his time. He's like, "Oh, come on, why don't you fight me, bro?" And he's like, "Well, I'm going to. Just give me a minute." And he's afraid.
Even though I've been ready to go for months.
So he was ready to go, and then the problem is that Karl is lying to his audience, so the longer he lies and the longer this drags out, the less he's working on borrowed time. Lies only last for so long, and he only has a certain amount of money to work with. So again, he was gambling. That's the nature of this gamble. If you can do it quickly and just sort of rush through things, that's one thing. But Billy Mitchell took his time. He was smart.
Naturally, if Billy had a case, you'd think they would want to get this sorted out as quickly as possible. I mean, Billy supposedly wants to prove to the world that he didn't cheat, and that Twin Galaxy...
He's like, come on, do you want to prove that you didn't cheat? Come on, dude. And so Karl is like goading him.
...were lying. Trial is his opportunity to do this. I mean, Billy supposedly wants to prove to the world that he didn't...
So, and again, it's like... It's the same behavior that Karl did earlier, where he was like, okay, well, I said this thing. Oh, you don't like that? Well, you have to prove my claims. And it's like, dude, you're making the person that you're accusing provide evidence for the accusation against you. It's like, that's literally the definition of a witch hunt. But you're the one who has to prove it. It's, someone is innocent until proven guilty, and you're the one who's making the claim. So this is the same exact behavior several years later. God damn it. And I didn't think that, I had heard about Billy Mitchell for years. I'm like, nah, there's no way I could think that I'd like this guy. And, it's like, no, I'm actually rooting for Billy.
Cheat, and that Twin Galaxies were lying. Trial is his opportunity to do this. The entire point of a defamation lawsuit is to show the public that what was said about you was wrong. The entire point...
No, the point isn't, again, you can't say a lie and then say, okay, well, I lied about you, so now you have to prove that I lied in court, because that's what he's doing. That's not the point of the justice system, ideally. Again, this is slap lawsuit behavior. He's doing what he's accusing the other person of doing. It's Darbo.
Point is to try and fix your public image and restore your reputation.
And again, a lot of that has to do with you, Karl. You trashed him, and now you're trying to pick a fight with him. God.
However, it seems as though Billy isn't really interested in that. All he wants to do is drag things out for as long as possible and to do as much financial damage as he can to his opponents.
Again, when you have someone who's acting in bad faith everything they say is a projection. So everything that he's accusing Billy Mitchell of doing, Karl is the one doing it.
A bitter war of Donkey Kong has exploded, with controversy over a high score making it all the way to a Queensland courtroom. An American video game champion is suing a Brisbane YouTuber over cheating claims.
Hello, you abs.
So in this particular video, if I remember correctly, Karl's like, oh yeah, it's not going so swimmingly. I don't know exactly what he says here, but I know that he is a lot more stressed out about the trial eventually, and he spins a particular narrative about it. My point being, regardless of what he says exactly here, he is going to present himself as the victim, even though he's been the one who's been lying and antagonizing Billy Mitchell this whole time. You know, he's basically going after someone with a reputation and money and, you know, acting like he's the white knight and Billy Mitchell's the black knight and he was wronged by this person, when really the entire time Karl's the one who's been acting like a piece of shit. Like,
Absolute legends. As many of you know, back in 2021, Con Artist of the Century Billy Mitchell sued me for defamation, claiming damages of almost $500,000. Let's take a look at some of the things I will be arguing at trial. Billy himself has already proven that his reputation was destroyed long before I ever talked about him. It doesn't matter if he can show that.
I like how he's like, okay, I remember this argument where he's like, well, Billy Mitchell's reputation was already shitty thanks to Karl. So it doesn't matter if he can prove that one thing I said being incorrect, then there's still all these other things. It's a false equivalency because it's like, no, you accused him of murder, basically, causing the death of someone, driving them to suicide, whatever the hell that is. Involuntary manslaughter, I don't know, bullying, cyberbullying, there's different ways you could spin that, but you accused him of being responsible for what happened to Apollo Legend and him taking his own life. And if he proves that wrong, that's like just a giant claim that you were making against him versus the cheating stuff. Like it's not like, well, I already accused him of cheating, and he's basically, Karl Jobst is saying that the cheating and the murder allegations or whatever, the causing someone to commit suicide allegations are, you know, one outweighs the other. The cheating allegations outweigh the other ones. And it's like, well, it's like 4 of one particular is greater than 1 of another. And it's like, no, the one's like an atom bomb. The other ones are just like these tiny little firecrackers, you know? And it's like, so again, Karl is continuing to be disingenuous here.
That I was incorrect on one thing. Even if he were to prove that I was wrong about a specific claim, there are many other claims that were true and also damaged his reputation.
Yes, but nowhere to near the same extent. And the entire time you are profiting off all of this, true or false.
So as a whole, any incorrect claim I may have made didn't cause any extra damage.
That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, oh, well, his reputation was already bad, so there's no way it could get worse. That doesn't, so you couldn't kick him while he was down because that's what you were doing. So he's lying to his audience here.
There are multiple barriers that Billy has to get through in order to be successful. He has to show that something that I said wasn't true and...
God, yeah, it's like, so Jobst is like just being very, very bad faith and trying to manipulate the system in such a way to basically get money out of Billy. And it's like, the more I watch this, I already knew that Karl was bad faith, but this is just like ridiculous.
And that it was defamatory. He then needs to prove that his reputation was damaged by that specific claim and has to prove those damages. From my side, I'm going to argue that what I said wasn't defamatory, that Billy's reputation was already terrible, and that I've said so many damaging things about him that were true and that I can prove that even if he did show that one thing...
This is a defamation lawsuit, so if you said something that wasn't true and it damaged his reputation, despite the fact that you think that that's impossible, congratulations, you are liable for what they're accusing you of, Karl. This is literally just him showing his own ignorance while admitting that he already said things that weren't true.
thing I said was wrong, it didn't make a difference.
So he's like, even if I did defamation, it doesn't matter. It's like, according to who? You're not the judge.
And there are other very important things on top of this that I won't discuss until after trial.
Oh, and there's some super important things, but I'm not going to mention them. Then they're irrelevant.
Trial happens. I couldn't sleep well for a long time. For the last couple of months, I've been feeling like dog shit. I've got like this charity drama crap.
Yeah, because it is stressful to try and con people. Like this is a high stakes thing for Karl. He's not just gambling. Like one thing that GamerX say that I really agree with is that he's not just gambling with his life, but his wife's life, his child's life. You know, it's like they very easily, he could have backed away, been the bigger man, and kept on doing what he's doing and still salvaged a lot of his reputation. He just like, okay, he said something about Billy Mitchell in regards to Apollo Legends. Okay, I retract that. I was wrong. You know what? And he could have kept on keeping on. It was never about him actually being a detective in good faith. It was about him being this snidely whiplash motherfucker who's just trying to get one up over Billy Mitchell to have him over a barrel. And his wife and his child are the ones who are going to be paying the price alongside him. And it's like, why?
Coming up, dealing with trying to figure out, oh my God, I'm going to have to earn 200 grand in the next 3 months to pay for this trial. The lawsuit has taken an extreme
boo-hoo, feel sorry for me.
Mental toll on me. I'm not free to just make the videos.
I'm a victim. My wife does the shopping. Like, get over yourself.
I want to make. And the lawsuit takes up so much of my mental energy and attention, it's hard to think about anything else. That's one of the reasons I make so many Billy Mitchell videos.
Because I want to milk him. What are the chances that Karl's lawyers might have taken advantage of this situation in order to always keep asking him for more and more money? Legal fees were more than what was requested on the lawsuit. How is that possible? So yeah, this is something LUS pointed out, is that it's entirely possible that Billy Mitchell was conning his audience, but then also the lawyers get paid regardless. So if they lose a case, it doesn't matter. Like ultimately, they're gonna get paid. So Karl, you know, his head got too swollen, his ego got too big, and he just kept paying and paying because he thought he would win. The lawyers don't care.
I spend so much time researching Billy for the sake of my own defense that it's hard to work on other projects. I do the best I can, but a lot of the time I just try to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and take what I've learned about Billy to make videos and use that to fund my legal expenses and prepare for the worst.
That's really stupid. You know, because again, it's not just affecting you, it's affecting your not just your family even, like your wife and your kid, but also people who have worked with you. That's why, you know, people like Some Ordinary Gamers or Penguin Zero or even Smash JT, you know, where they were just kind of like distancing themselves from you, and with good reason, because you're acting in bad faith and in ways that could become very quickly poisonous. And you've tried to hide that for years.
As many of you know, in September and October, I went to trial because of Billy's defamation lawsuit against me. I've had a lot of people ask me what's going on, and if there has been a decision. My trial will be decided by a judge. This takes time, and we will probably be waiting months for...
The judge is smart. The judge is very smart. My judge seems pretty good. Now notice, he likes the judge until the judge decides that Karl is full of shit. So it's like he's trying to snow job the judge, and then the judge is like, no, you're a fucking asshole, and then Karl is like, well, yeah, fuck you.
for the judge to come back with his decision, and I don't know what that decision is going to be. Even though many people who've read about my trial say they think I will win, I am keeping myself very humble. For my own mental health, I have already accepted the worst case scenario. I am already psychologically prepared to lose. I think the worst thing that could happen...
That's not a good sign. Like, He's kind of self-reporting a little bit here.
Is I get my hopes up, think I'm definitely going...
I think the judge is applying the law wrong here. Hours of content about his cheating in lawsuits, 1 paragraph about Apollo. He's like, pay no attention to Apollo Legends. All the cheating stuff, which is a smokescreen. Oh, the judge was ridiculous in his judgment. you'd have to look at previous cases with similar awards. And yeah.
Going to win and then end up losing. I'd rather assume I've already lost, deal with the grief early, and then hopefully be pleasantly surprised by a positive result. On a more positive note, it really seems like Billy's legal crusade is coming to an end.
Again, projection, right? Billy's crusade. But who's the one who's been goading and saber-rattling and the false flag operations and the Darvo obscurantism, Nazi-style type warfare? Karl.
Lawsuits have either been dismissed or settled. Note that Billy has never ever actually won. The only lawsuit Billy has remaining is the one against me. Am I really going to be the only person Billy wins against? Oh boy, wouldn't that just be hilarious.
I have concluded that there should be judgment for Mr. Mitchell in the sum of $300,000 for non-economic loss and $50,000 in aggravated damages. In addition, Mr. Jobst should pay interest on those amounts. Finally, ordinarily an unsuccessful party is ordered to pay the successful party's costs of the proceeding. At present, I see no reason why I should not make such an order against Mr. Jobst.
Sucker. So again, it's basically the con artist conning himself. Mr. Jobst also has a self-aggrandizing and self-protective tendency not to admit error once he has taken a stance. This is a very Nazi-like thing, you know, death before dishonor, final victory, force of will, the mythic truth. You know, it's like reality and evidence don't matter, which is all the more ironic given that, you know, Jobst isn't a bad detective. It's just that the way that he applied it was bad, and not just to other people, but towards himself. It's like if he had just, you know, stayed clean and or stopped being a Nazi and went clean, he could have gone far and done a lot of good in the world. But instead, he basically wasted all of this time doing what he did. It's because the only thing he cared about was winning in a court of law against Billy Mitchell when he had no reason to really be there except to make trouble and throw everyone, including himself, under the bus.
A Brisbane YouTuber will have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars after accusing a high-profile gamer of cheating.
And another thing, too, just keeping with like the ignominious death here, is that all of this is coming out in ways that he can't control. Karl can't control what people are saying about him. And this is like getting international coverage, not just in Australia, but around the world. And not just on YouTube, but on like television. The Guardian had an article about this.
And contributing to the death of another gamer, the online icon successfully suing him for posting defamatory material to his 1 million followers.
There's another Billy Mitchell video. There's a Billy Mitchell video. And so another Billy Mitchell video, another one.
Asmongold, giant piece of shit.
Another one. Everybody thought this lawsuit was about those videos.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, Asmongold's perhaps not the first person you should listen to because he's a Zionist and just a tremendously like racist individual. But he's not wrong. He's not wrong about this. You know, so again, when I said earlier that you have people like Smash JT and Penguin Zero critiquing him, it also includes people who are just openly like racist and awful. And this individual, Asmongold, is one of those. You know, so if you are on the losing end of an argument with Asmongold, you know you fucked up.
And the alleged cheating scores. There's never any instance or mention about the Apollo suicide thing, and this is a video Karl made. And they felt like they were misled because they believed this lawsuit was about the authenticity of Billy Mitchell's video game records. Everybody was on Karl's side. I think that if the explanation of this guy, you know, like basically suing because of the implication that he sued somebody into killing himself, I think that the public reception to it would have been very different.
He definitely misled people into thinking it might be because of
like cheating.
Yeah, yeah. So again, Red Cow Arcade, a similar, a group of, these guys are dickheads, but they're not wrong, in this case, so this is the result of the gambling that Karl was doing. He's reaping the whirlwind. It's a reckoning.
Well, he didn't say what it was about, but then he launched a GoFundMe and said, here, let me say it like him. So, Karl Jobst launched a GoFundMe titled Karl Jobst Legal Defense Fund, framed the lawsuit as an attack on the truth, and claimed it was retaliation for exposing Mitchell as a proven cheater.
Yeah, it's a foreign plot. It's a foreign plot within a particular area, and so this is standard issue like Nazi Germany shit. It's like Karl Jobst is the Nazi, and Billy Mitchell in this case is his punching bag. He's the Jew in Germany, basically.
No point was this Apollo legend stuff.
Which, I mean, Billy Mitchell, from what I understand, isn't actually Jewish, but that's just, just what was happening is that Karl Jobst needed an enemy, someone to say, oh, well, this is a conspiracy, and this is the result of all of that argumentation.
Mentioned. That's perfectly reasonable. That's perfectly fine. You're not supposed to talk about your lawsuits, but he's out there. He was making videos like it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's like you're not supposed to do it, but he was doing it plenty is the thing. He was telling people what to think. He's like, oh, I can't talk about it, but I will say this. So he's like, he's going to keep people in the dark, but then try and shape how they think about what's going on. So he was saying plenty.
And the judge, when he was reading the sentence, he started reading all this shit talk that Karl was doing.
Mr. Jobst's conduct of this litigation, together with his additional online comments about it, were aggravating features of his conduct. Even in February 2024, as this action was progressing toward trial, he said in an online interview, Billy Mitchell needs to be destroyed in court. These people need to be punished in a big way before they stop. They need to get taught a lesson. So I am now the last chance.
Yeah, so it's like it's the white savior kind of complex, and this has all been carefully manufactured to present himself as like the hero in the public's eyes, but it's all a sham. It's all a lie. All the more ironic given, it's like Billy Mitchell is not a perfect person by any stretch, but he's making Billy Mitchell look really good by comparison. It's like, why would you try and do this kind of thing in a court of law? It's like just stick to, it's like he really, again, the bad faith, and to answer my own question, it's the bad faith behavior. He really wanted to harm Billy. Like this was like personal between them, and he didn't just want to make fun of him for cheating at Donkey Kong. Like he wanted to destroy his very existence, and he failed.
I am the last chance the public has to punish Billy. And also, the last person on YouTube you want to lose to is me. There's going to be 100 vids rubbing it in. I will never let Billy forget this, assuming I win. I've got to win first, but man, if I win, oh boy, I'm not going to be a good winner.
Billy Mitchell needs to be destroyed in court. He needs to be destroyed in court. So these people need to be punished in a big way before.
These people, like, I could just picture him at a podium giving a speech to Nazi Germany. It's the Jews. It's the Billy Mitchell question.
They stop. They need to get taught a lesson. So I am now the last chance. I'm the last chance the public has to punish Billy.
Yeah.
It's basically like a witch hunt FOMO. Persecute now.
And in Australia, when you lose, you get generally almost always get awarded a judgment for costs, which means you got to pay back a certain amount of the costs. And because my costs are so high, Billy's looking at like a bill for like $300,000 or $400,000 when he loses. So if I was Billy, I'd be shitting myself. And also, like, the last person on YouTube you want to lose to is me. Yeah. There's going to be 100 vids rubbing it in afterwards.
And now, how prophetic, right? Again, this is all projection. Now there's going to be 100 vids from other people rubbing it in versus Karl. Way to go, dumbass.
Billy will never, I will never let Billy forget this, assuming I win.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I got to win first, but man, if I win, oh boy, I'm not going to be a good winner.
What a dick.
How do we get to the point where one human being hates another human being to the degree Karl Jobst clearly hates Billy Mitchell?
Well, yeah, and it's like, I've critiqued LUS before for basically being like the neutral lawyer, but he raises a very good question. Like, why does Karl Jobst hate Billy Mitchell so much? And, to this day, I'm not entirely sure, because they both cheated at video games. So it's like they have more in common than they do things apart. Though I actually, I want to be fair to Billy, and I would say that he's, relatively speaking, more honorable by a country mile than Karl Jobst. Like, Karl Jobst is the one who basically exposed, like, through his actions and his lies, trying to defame Billy Mitchell, proved himself to be the one who was dishonorable. And Billy Mitchell, by comparison, looks much better after this.
He is a disgraced cheater that everyone hates, no one wants him around, and I'm the only thing keeping him relevant.
I don't want to sort of talk about his family life.
Yeah.
Just out of respect. I mean, no matter how much I hate someone, I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
But he is married and he does have children.
And I'm now of the opinion he is legitimately evil, and hopefully something can be done to stop him soon.
Yeah, it's like this is all like really mean-spirited, and he doesn't, supposedly Billy Mitchell's son was involved with this, and just other people. I'm not saying that Billy Mitchell didn't cause people grief, but just comparatively speaking, the degree to which Karl, it's like pot, meat, kettle, right? Except in this case, Karl is a lot worse than Billy insofar as what he's accusing him of doing.
I don't want to sort of talk about his family.
His wife and son, the socials, and they are psycho. He wants some advice. Billy Mitchell's wife offers to sleep with you. Don't do it. It's like, what the fuck?
Life.
Yeah.
Just out of
I will do a vid on the son after they lose.
respect. I mean, no matter how much I hate someone.
His son is a psycho, but I can say that because I know it to be true. According to what?
I don't want to go there.
He is very dumb. Is under the thumb of his psycho son. He thinks he has a chance because he is too dumb to realize otherwise. Like, what the hell?
Yeah. But he is married and he does have children.
His son is more of a psycho. He is like Billy without the people skills and more evil. Christ, I don't like the thought of a younger, more psychotic Billy being a thing. Oh, it's a thing. It's a thing in a very big way. Can't wait to hammer the son soon. Need to publicly disgrace him. Yeah, it's like Karl cares more about doing that than making money. Because obviously money isn't important to him or his reputation or anything. He lives for this.
I don't want to sort of talk about his family life.
Like there's the kayfabe, right, where you have the wrestling stage and you have the heel and the baby face. I'm not sure which is which here, but it's like Karl's presenting himself as the baby face, and that Billy Mitchell is the heel, the villain. The thing is, the kayfabe is something that kind of bleeds on and off the stage, but the reality is that Billy Mitchell's like the one who's he's the guy who's trying to spin the entire narrative on and off stage, and because you'd have all these videos with this footage presenting it, this is pure kayfabe. But the thing is that Billy, the whole point about kayfabe is it's both parties are supposed to consent to it. They're both supposed to be in on it. But the thing is he's just going after Billy Mitchell. Karl is just going after Billy Mitchell and attacking him in a way that Billy Mitchell did not agree to. When you get to the point where someone is suing you for hundreds of thousands of dollars, intercontinental lawsuits, suing them in your home country versus theirs, like that is no longer in good faith. That is someone defending themselves from you attacking them in this particular instance. And I gotta admit, Karl was effective. When I saw these, I'm like, oh, haha, he's very good, because this audience, this digital audience is literally his following, and he's attacking someone in such a way where they can't defend themselves, and he's not letting people face Billy Mitchell and hear his side of things. And also Billy Mitchell didn't want to play Karl's game, so he just took him to court and won. So Billy Mitchell, good on him for doing that. And the thing is he could have done all of this and made fun of Billy Mitchell for cheating at Donkey Kong and left out the Apollo Legends stuff, and he could still be making money off him. Because he did. Billy Mitchell, he had him dead to rights as far as that goes. You know, it's not a crime to make fun of someone. It's a crime to make fun of someone, to defame them by saying things that aren't true and accusing them of, you know, causing the death of another person due to a lawsuit that never happened the way that you said it did. These scenes can be found in many KJ videos about Billy Mitchell. Yeah, absolutely. I remember seeing this all the time. You know, it's like, I'm like, oh yeah, he cheated, right? Get that cheater. You know, it wasn't like, yeah, Apollo Legend, wait, I'm confused. It was always about cheating. Yeah, and the thing is it's not just an act. Billy Mitchell's not on it, and there's a tremendous amount of bad faith action where it's not about the money, it's not about it being true or false. It's about the stuff that he's doing to Billy is what he wants to do to him in real life. He wants to destroy him. He wants to destroy his whole family. It's like gothic villain shit. Well, yeah, it's like Billy Mitchell was smart because he went after the one thing that Karl couldn't defend. You know, it's like there's no way he can defend what he said he did. And he's absolutely right about that. And it was good for him to pick that, you know, pick your battles. And that's what Billy Mitchell did. Billy Mitchell always has a plan. I don't know about always, but in terms of this, you know, he absolutely was smart about what he did. He picked the right battle to fight, and he won.
13% of Karl's videos are made up of content talking about Billy Mitchell.
Try and build my YouTube channel. I felt like the Billy Mitchell thing was a very interesting topic. I mean, I love it. Billy Mitchell is like a content creating machine.
Yep.
That's a lot of content for Billy's legal team to sift through to make the points that they wanted to make in their case against Karl.
Yeah, it's giving him ammunition.
And with titles calling Billy gaming's biggest con man, disgraced, and cheater repeatedly, Karl was double, tripling, quadrupling, octupling, sextupling, septupling down, like literally just
There's a lot of people that are, you know, rightfully a little confused that, whoa, why are you bringing up Apollo Legend and litigating who's responsible for him taking his own life? I really did think this whole case was about just cheating. But I feel like there probably should have been more transparency.
Yeah, and, you know, even me, when I was keeping an eye on Karl, and even after I discovered that he was like a con man, like, oh, okay, the Nazi stuff, when that came to light, and, you know, it's, when I was doing a lot of my research, I was either, you know, up to my eyeballs in academic articles or secondary sources that had to do, you know, I was doing close reads that weren't on YouTube. So, you know, I was writing about old Gothic novels or movies, Metroidvania, or I was on YouTube, you know, but I was never on Reddit, ever. And, you know, so by the time I found out about that, even after I found out about that, I still didn't really connect the dots as far as Apollo Legends goes. This only came to light for me after the trial and everything. And I was like, wait a second. You know, so it's like Karl was lying a lot, not just to me, but to his friends. And a lot of them didn't have any idea either.
Transparency. Most of my investigation videos go through a team of lawyers that we have that will comb through the video for legal clearances. Most of my investigation videos go through a team of lawyers.
Yeah, Karl is not happy with lawyers.
And widely known as the King of Kong for his global high scores. Billy Mitchell's been locked in a bitter gaming battle with
Yeah, and it's just the reality. It's like the whole point of a Gothic villain is that they are trying to turn the public against you. They're framing you in a very particular way and then attacking you and then basically taking all that you know and love. It's just a very disingenuous kind of character, but they're also playing a very dangerous game where in the classic novels, they always wind up being exposed. So Father Schedoni and Radcliffe's Italian, or Ambrosio from Matthew Lewis's The Monk, where they spend the entire story lying to everyone, and then they're exposed as frauds at the end, and they die the ignominious death. No, in Karl's case, I don't think that's going to happen with him. He already lost his case. His reputation is in the shitter, and there's no coming back from this. Like, because like I said, people are realizing that he lied to all of them, and not just like about something small, but costing a lot of people money, and he's a giant hypocrite. But also they're looking into his sex pest history, his pickup artistry, but also eventually someone's going to find out about how racist he was as well, and they're going to talk about that. And once that happens, everyone talked about the sexist stuff. Next thing you know, they're going to talk about the racist stuff too. And if they don't to nearly the same extent, because let's be real, a lot of the guys that are distancing themselves from him are probably racist themselves, to a lesser extent perhaps, because they're not just out and out Nazis. But yeah, just look at those dark, evil eyes. And, knowing what you know now about Karl, it's like, this is the face of someone who has lied to his audience for years to go after someone and destroy them purely because he hates them. And again, I don't agree with everything that Billy Mitchell did, but nobody deserves that kind of thing. Because again, Billy Mitchell didn't do what Karl Jobst said he did. It's like, this is the kind of behavior that you would expect of someone seeking revenge for having done something really, really bad to you. But again, with Nazis versus Jewish people and other scapegoats, they accuse them, well, they did something first, so now we're going to have a revenge against them. So it's like, it's a false flag. That's all that it is. It was never true. And then Karl is just using that to try and get what he wants. It's just a very strongman approach to reality, bending reality to his will through lies and deception. So yeah, Karl's a Nazi. He sucks. He sucks a lot. And none of this is new to me, but even going over it, just the extent to which he was lying and to what other people covered in terms of, Gen X Gamer, Smash JT, LUS, and just various other people as well. Just everyone in this part of the playlist. It's just, and these are just the channels that I've seen. This is a scandal. This isn't just like a little old thing. So it's like Karl Jobst went from being like Elliot Ness to Dark Side Phil. Which is a hell of a transformation. But it's like, nice going, stupid. And the sad reality is, you might ask yourself, well, why did he do this? Okay, so let's close the video with that. Why? And it's like, he's sick. He's someone who has to do this because that's what they get out of it. He's an abuser. He abuses people, regardless of why he's an abuser. That's what he does, and he's defined by his actions. You don't have to understand the exact motives or reasons. It's just that that's what he does. And, it's partly comorbid, partly congenital. It's nature and nurture. But through the total sum of both of those, he is an abuser. I would ask the same question about my ex, and why did they abuse me? And why didn't they just get along with me and try and, actually have a healthy relationship instead of doing something comparable to what Billy Mitchell and what happened between Karl Jobst and Billy Mitchell, where one side was antagonizing the other by lying to them constantly, just gaslighting them and just acting in bad faith constantly. And I came to the realization that that's what my ex cared about. That's what Lindsay cared about. And that's what Karl cares about. It doesn't matter why. Why does Soren want the One Ring? It doesn't matter. It's all his thought is bent on it. And that's what he wants. It's a trinket that Sauron fancies. And Billy Mitchell's heart was a trinket that Karl Jobst fancies. And it's like, do you want to spend time with someone who acts like that? It's like, people like this are dangerous. They do nothing but harm those around them. And I feel sorry for Karl's wife and kid. I feel sorry for Karl's friends. I feel sorry for Billy Mitchell. I feel sorry for everyone but Karl. It's just that Karl dug his own grave, and he dragged down a lot of people with him for just pride, basically. It wasn't even about money. Not that it would matter exactly as to what it was about. It was just completely preventable. And Karl could have continued doing good works, investigating. It's like the completionist did some stuff that was pretty scummy, or at least negligent. And in terms of some of the people, the expert witness, that Zarda person that Billy Mitchell hired was a piece of shit. I agree with Karl on that. But at the same time, because he was actually a sex pest, and it's just like, okay, it takes one to know one, Karl. But yeah, so that basically concludes everything that I want to say about Billy Mitchell. I wanted to watch this video, in particular the no commentary timeline by Arkamatt Games and Scandals, just because it's very comprehensive. It covers everything from a point of view that Karl Jobst isn't going to be able to spin. I didn't want to watch Karl Jobst's video just because it's like, okay, he's a bad actor, so it's just like, why would I want to listen to him try and defend himself? Also, the trial's over. He lost, and he lied to people. That is a matter of record at this point. But I did want to mention some other people, so I did that. I watched the no commentary thing. I don't think, unless something, I am going to be keeping tabs on Karl moving forwards, but unless people start talking about him in a way where he shows everyone his ass, and people start talking about the racist side, I'm there for that. Maybe RWhiteGoose will come clean and show everyone where the bodies are buried. I will totally sit down and respond to that. But other than that, I think I'm mostly done with Karl. It's like my book series is nearly done. My research on Metroidvania and speedrunning is nearly done. And I'm just going to, move forward with my life. Life where I have not defamed my friends and gone needlessly after people who did nothing to wrong me. Unlike Karl, who basically did that, has been doing that for years at this point. Such a waste. But in any event, I hope that you found this video informative just from my biased point of view, as a white trans woman who's studied speedrunning and Metroidvania and gaming journalism and is a gaming journalist as far as I'm concerned. I've written multiple books about this. I've interviewed plenty of world record speedrunners, and I've dealt with people like Karl Jobst before, and I've dealt with people like the people that he's attacked before too. So it's not I care a lot about the kind of stuff that Karl talks about, but apparently he doesn't, because he's willing to drag all of this through the mud just to try and make and beat someone else in a lawsuit. It's stupid. But yeah, good riddance. I hope that people around him use this as an important lesson. As far as Karl goes, I hope that he stops what he's doing and he doesn't harm anyone else. And I don't very much care. I'm going to try and not think about him too much after this. Just I got other things I want to work on. And as far as that goes, like, share, and subscribe this video, follow my channel, that kind of thing. If you want to see more, I'm going to be focusing more on my book series and promoting it and talking about Metroidvania more in the weeks ahead. So if that sounds interesting, stay tuned. And until then, take care. Bye for now.